Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the May 17th, 2016 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. All selectmen are present. We have a full agenda this evening, so we are going to move right along as quickly as we can. Just for those that are here for item number 1 under schedule appointments, the Burnett House update, we are waiting for an individual to arrive, so we are going to slide number 1 down and begin with Mr. Moriali once we get to that section of the agenda. The first item to discuss is the reorganization of the board. As everyone knows, after each election cycle on an annual basis, this board reorganizes. The reorganization is a selection of a new chair and a vice chair to assume that role for until the next election cycle. And so that's what we're going to discuss now. I'd open up for any comments. Yep, Mr. Spino.
Mr. Chairman, traditionally the board has had a sort of a three, well, when we were 3 people, there was a cycle where the next person up for election would fill the chair's seat. Clearly with 5, there's no geometric way to do that anymore. And I'm personally of the mind that there was nothing magic about that. I think we have a lot of things pending with this board that call for continuity in many ways, including of leadership. So I would make a motion to keep Mr. Rooney as chair and Mr. Shea as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Mr. Clender?
So
Yep.
my motion, well, we have a motion on the table, but I fully support if we split them, that might not be a bad idea. I absolutely would support you as chairman again, Mr. Rooney. I think you've done an outstanding job. Your leadership is well demonstrated. I don't know about Mr. Shea's interest in being a vice chair, but we could hear from that as well. But if we want to split it, that's great. If we want to keep them together as the motion currently is, then you clearly have my support, Mr. Rooney.
Thank you. Mr. Shea?
So I guess first, I would also say that I support the nomination for you continuing in the role as chair, but certainly understand there's probably additional responsibilities and duties that come along with that, and respecting that you've just done that for this past year. I don't know if you're certainly willing to continue in the role as chair, then I would vote in that way, but I would certainly respect your decision if you chose not to for other personal work or other reasons that would preclude you from continuing as chair.
And what say you, sir, with respect to your nomination for vice chair?
I would accept the nomination. I would also recognize that I think that there are others at the board here that would do a great job as well. Certainly we're that, again, going back to the continuation of what the board had traditionally done with having a person in their last year serve as chair. You did that last year. You're going to continue this year, which I think is great. So if we were to continue with, as it had happened in the past, Mr. Semino and Mr. Clender are the 2 that would be up for positions. If either or both of those wanted to do it, I would support either one. Certainly Mr. Clender didn't have a role last year. Mr. Semino did. I would support Mr. Clender in that role. I would support Mr. Semino as well. And I would accept a nomination if the board chose to go that way.
Mrs. Faniff?
I'm not going to repeat everything, but I think Mr. Rooney has served this board quite well, and I would hope that he would continue as chairman. I'm of the mindset that I believe all new members should act in a capacity on this role, on this board, whether they be chair or vice chair. So I believe at this time Mr. Shea should, if willing, become vice chair of this committee.
Well, I can tell you that there's no there's no magic or special keys that you're given when you are the chair. I tried to over the last year include everyone in every term, in every substantive issue. If anyone has a burning desire to be the chair, I'd be willing to step aside and do that. At the same time, there are a couple of continuity issues, one in terms of the negotiation with St. Mark's and the negotiation on the public safety facility, public safety building that I feel particularly close to, that I would like to continue to lead forward on. That said, if the vote is to keep me as chair, I would accept that. And why don't we vote on Mr. Semino's motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is the,
No, let's go to Moriarty.
Mr. Moriarty, creation of a committee to study town meeting procedure and citizen engagement. Congratulations, sir, first of all, on your election. Welcome to our meeting tonight, and thank you particularly for jumping right in with both feet and making an effort to improve attendance at town meeting, and with the proposal that you just handed us, I assume the public does not have this based upon the fact that you just gave it to us, and we're going to begin discussing it this evening.
It is available, if you could. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks to all who participated in the voting, and congratulations to those who won. Since I was voted in and sworn in last week, I've been working to gain town hall email, which I now have, voicemail, which I now have, and expect to add material to the town moderator website. I am reaching out to other town moderators and have joined the Mass Moderators Association to be a quick study on what is expected of me as your town moderator. I am looking forward to hearing from voters on what can be done to improve town meeting, to improve the process, to improve the efficiency, to improve the delivery of information to people well before they walk into the town meeting hall at that particular point. I asked to appear before the committee, your committee, the board, to discuss the possibility of creating a joint ad hoc committee. We will need to look for some interested and capable people for a short period of time who have the capacity to research, write, and interview so that we can find out what best practices there are in other places that we can bring to Southborough. It'll be vital to gain input from our fellow citizens, and that will be one of the charges that I would suggest. In front of you, you have a proposal, and if you don't mind, I will read it for the benefit of those who do not have it in front. The Southborough Town Meeting Review Committee, the TMRC is what I would suggest we call it, the Town Meeting Review Committee, would be established in 2016 to review the town meeting process, participation, workflow, and the day and times that it's held. The committee would be comprised of 5 members. It would be staffed by 3 appointed by myself as the town administrator and 2 by the Board of Selectmen. Again, this is subject to discussion and edit. The charge of the TMRC will include, but not be limited to, exploring best practices in other New England communities. The committee will explore voting procedures, warrant review, improving public education of town meeting voters using multiple means and modes of media, and improving interest, efficiency, and attendance. The TMSRC would be expected to present a report to the town moderator and the Board of Selectmen together at a joint meeting by February 2017, before preparations for the 2017 annual town meeting. The BOS and myself as moderator would work with the committee to craft potential warrant articles that would come from this report. The report should include recommendations to enhance and improve delivery of information to voters, reports and briefings by the boards, in other words, to shorten those up a bit, to identify the best practices for other localities, including the day and time of meeting and voting procedures, considering possibly electronic voting methods during town meeting. I would suggest and stress to the committee as it was formulated that the feedback and input of citizens will be extremely vital to collect in any number of ways. It suggested that that the members will reach out to other towns, current and past town moderators, Mass Moderators Association, and the MMA, and other related groups. The TMRC would be disbanded following delivery of the TMRC report and any warrant articles that I expect would stem from that final report.
Questions from the board? Mrs. Faniff?
I have just two, Mr. Morelli. You suggested a 5-member. Could we have an ex-official member on that?
Of course.
Town administrator, maybe?
Nope, whomever we would decide, that would be fine. I think that would be
All right. And as
suitable.
far as reporting back to the Board of Selectmen, could we have a goal of January? That way we're not in conflict with town meeting and
not a problem
everything
at
else going?
Sure, that's why, this is subject to change. I have no problem. This was just the beginning for discussion.
But it's doable, you think?
Yes, I think so.
January? Okay.
I think so. I will tell you, Bonnie, at first, one of the things I was thinking was trying to get them to turn it around before any intended or possible fall special town meeting. I think that that's a little bit burdensome, so I think it's much better to let them have some time to collect and to analyze, and then come back with a good report.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
That's all.
Can I just, before I go to the other board members, suggest a more aggressive date, only because we closed the warrant for this town meeting on January 5th, and you're gonna wanna have the report back well in advance of us closing the warrant. So I would suggest an early December date for
Okay.
the committee to report back to the board.
Okay, so we'll look at the Friday in let's say mid-January, mid-December, I'm sorry? I don't
I
have a
would say
calendar in
early
front of me.
December, be
Okay.
even more aggressive,
Do you have a number in mind? 1, 5, 7?
whatever.
Okay, we'll look at that.
Mr. Kalenda?
Nothing further. It's a great idea, Mr. Morelli. Thank you for bringing it up.
Mr. Shea?
Nothing further.
Mr. Semino?
Nothing further. I think the best practices in other communities obviously is a great source. But you've been careful to say, but it's not limited to that, which I think is great. You know, there'll be plenty of good ideas internally as well. So, excellent. I support it 100%.
The only suggestion I would make, and it's not really a suggestion relative to the actual document, is that we give people in town an opportunity to indicate their interest in serving on this ad hoc committee by sending a note either or both to Mr. Moriali or to the Board of Selectmen. And that note should come within the next 2 weeks, so that we can have the formation of the committee take place at our next meeting,
Great.
given the aggressive schedule that we are anticipating. In addition, the type of people, obviously, you're going to want to look for people who are willing to do quite a bit of research, written research and writing reports, as opposed to actual physical meetings. There may not be that many, correct?
Well, that's up to them.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do it every week, every couple of weeks, once a month.
Right.
You know, it's up to them. I don't want to micromanage that.
Right.
But I would appear at the first to try to guide them and hear what they have to say, and then let them go.
Okay. So what I would suggest, Mr. Moriali, is that we make a revision to this, this charge, the revision to be adopted at our next meeting, when we will also appoint the committee.
Good.
Make sense?
No problem.
Any-
So, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, with your permission, what I will do is I will make the edits, get it out on the moderator, on both of ours. In other words, let's get this out as soon as possible so that we can basically call for interest, and then assemble those, and then discuss it at your next meeting.
Anyone here this evening would like to comment on this particular topic? I know it's somewhat it's not giving you much time to look at, and that's why we're going to continue it to our next meeting to have a further review of the proposal, and at that point, adopt the charge to the committee. But if anyone wants to make a comment this evening, yes, Ms. Hale?
I just wanted to talk about a deadline. If we're going to appoint committee members at the next meeting, the deadline to supply your name to the moderator or the Board of Selectmen's office really should be by June 1st.
Great. Okay? Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, sir. Can we,
Yeah, let's do it.
all right, the next item, again, we're gonna skip down to number 3. The planning board request to hire special counsel.
We're not gonna skip to number 10.
Is he here?
No, but we're not gonna wait for him.
All right. Apparently, we're now going back to number 1 because we're no longer waiting for the person that we were waiting for, as that person is not here. Burnett House update, Mr. Semino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We felt like, given the interest in this topic, to take a very few minutes, the interest in this topic at town meeting, to take a very few minutes to let people know what's happened since then. Mr. Hubley from Historical is here, and I'd ask him to just start with that.
Thank you, Mr. Semino, Chair. About a month ago, I think, with the owner, we toured the grounds and the building of 84 Main Street quickly, went over the site, and with the owner and his intentions of doing the grounds and the building. So with that, he has to present a plan to the Historical Commission, and we will review that plan once that comes in with the owner. So I think he wants to get started relatively soon, like sometime in the beginning of the summer, if all goes well according to plan. So we're working very closely with him on that to develop a timeline. We want to make sure that before any work is done, that we're going to let the public know via our website or the town website, so what the people can expect as they drive by and see the grounds, and just, about the trees. A lot of the trees are in really tough shape. Which trees are going, which trees are staying. So that plan will be on the website, so people will know. Other than that, that's really what's happening. And as far as the preservation restriction, that soon will be ready for signatures by all the parties, and we'll move forward from there. I think that the whole experience, I know it involved a lot of people, and I kind of missed thanking our attorney, Aldo Cipriano, for the amount of work that he did, and the writing that he did for drafting that preservation restriction. It was quite a bit of work, and I just wanted to recognize him tonight because I see him here, and thank him for all his work. And I think the town should be very thankful they have a great attorney representing us. Thank you.
So I should mention that the owner of the house wanted to be here tonight, and he's on his way, but in the interest of our very packed agenda, we went ahead. So he will eventually get here, but I wanted to...
Need a microphone.
Right you are, Mr. Clinton. Sorry, everybody hear me? Mr. Hubley just mentioned that there was a ton of process that went into what eventually was a very strong town meeting vote to save this house. And he's certainly right about that. Every journey has a first step. And we, as a board, wanted to recognize that in this case because it was special. We had, a good group, a fairly large group of teenagers who protested the original plan to demolish the house and to develop the property. And in doing so, whether you agreed or not that this was a worthy end to this, whether you agreed or not, you certainly can't deny that the example they set in terms of civic activism is one we could all take to heart. So tonight I want to present to each of them a framed copy of Mr. Deli Priscoli's demolition permit, stamped void. If you guys could come up and when I call your name and stay up, please. Bridget Brady. Jen Fox. Maggie Shoemaker. And Kaylee Travins. Congratulations to all you ladies. Like I said, you set an example for all of us, and we just want to make sure you knew how much we appreciated that. So,
Okay, before you sit down, you each have to make a short speech. Are you aware of that? No, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item we are discussing is a planning board request to hire special counsel. Before we discuss that, as Mr. DePietri and his counsel, Mr. Catanzaro, know, as Mr. Morris and Mr. Jenks from the planning board know, as Mr. Barnolini knows, and as this board knows, I am unable to participate in any discussions relative to this particular development. My law firm, of which I am an owner, is in a butter. We rent a piece of property, or rent an office space at 2 Park Central. As a result, I've had conversations and communications with the State Ethics Commission, and they have told me in no uncertain terms that as an elected official and as an abutter, I must necessarily recuse myself from any involvement at all relative to this development at this location. So I will be stepping down from this discussion and turning the matter over to Mr. Shea, the new vice chair. Mrs. Fana?
If I may, Mr. Rooney, I filed with the town clerk on January 11th of this year a disclosure of appearance of a conflict of interest under 268A, Section 23B3. My son owns a company in the town which has done work for JBJ, where Mr. DePietri is a principal in. The State Ethics Commission, which I have spoken with several times, has said that I do not have a conflict. However, because of the discussions that are happening in this town, I feel it's in the best interest of this community not to sit in on this particular issue. I have served on the Housing Partnership for over 30 years with the Southborough Housing Authority. I've been party to 3 developments in this town. I have negotiated on that same site with Mr. Jenks, who is now sitting on the planning board. And I understand the concerns of the neighbors. I also understand the concerns of the developer's right, the 40B law, but in fairness to the residents and the developer, I think at this time it's best that I not sit here. Thank you.
Mr. Shea?
Okay. So, Item 3 on the agenda, the planning board request to hire special counsel, Mr. Morris. Do you want to give a summary of your reason? My plan is to hear from Mr. Morris. He can give his explanation for the request that he is making. We can discuss this at our board level, and then I plan to turn it over to any other town committees that are present and any other people that are here that would like to ask questions or make a comment. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Good evening. The planning board is now in session. We have a quorum, duly posted meeting for tonight. Yeah, as we all know, the Park Central project's been around for over a year and a half. A year and a half ago, the planning board expressed in a letter its concern about making sure that the process is managed within the authorities of the various components of the town government. Since then, we've expressed that concern at numerous meetings, planning board meetings, and throughout the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearings, which have extended over many, many months. Last January 7th, the planning board submitted a letter in accordance with the town code, which requires that any special counsel be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So the planning board, through the town planner, submitted a letter requesting permission to have independent counsel take a look at the process and address the planning board's concerns. Shortly after that letter was submitted to the Board of Selectmen, the planning board decided and asked for the Board of Selectmen to table that. Since that time, there's been further actions by the ZBA through the public hearing process. And most recently, at a planning board meeting, it was decided by the majority of the board to ask to have that letter put back on the table and to be put on the Board of Selectmen's agenda for you to consider. We have submitted to you today, I think you all have it, it's a 1.5-page list of our concerns and questions. It's a draft, but it would give you certainly give you an idea of the direction that we would want this independent counsel to go through. I'd like to ask Mr. Jenks to pick up from here, and then other board members may want to speak, and then at the end I have a couple of words to say, if that's okay. Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Phil Jenks, Planning Board. Thank you for entertaining us this evening and our request. I would like to ask first, if I may, what is the standard that we are expected to meet in order to get a positive result for our request? What are you looking for?
So I don't know that there's an exact standard. I think this is something that is not often requested. And I will say, you know, from my perspective, I've taken a look at everything that's been submitted. I'd be hard-pressed to approve it. Maybe I could be influenced to do so. But I also want to hear from town council if he would like to opine on the issue. But, you know, I think one of the worst things we could do is have, you know, town council, you know, provides representation for all of our boards and committees. And as we heard from Mr. Hubley, and I agree with him, he does great work. People may not always agree with the legal interpretation that they receive from any particular lawyer. You know, he is ours, and he has served this town incredibly well for many, many years. I think we create a very dangerous precedent to have one board request their own counsel, and, you know, because they don't agree with the interpretation of someone as learned as Mr. Cipriano. So I have tremendous respect for the planning board, its members, and the work that it does. You know, my biggest challenge, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to overcome it, but, you know, what happens then? If we end up doing this, and we've got competing councils going, we're one town. We're different boards, but we're one town. And, you know, we have one lawyer that represents us, and as I've said, does it incredibly well. So I don't know how you overcome that. If you have some ideas, I'd like to hear it. I've read what's been submitted, but I'm still not convinced that the precedent that this would set, you know, would be overcome by the greater good of doing this particular instance.
Let me take a moment, if I may, to give you a little background on that. We are not challenging Attorney Cipriano. I made the original motion back in, I think it was back in January, to seek outside counsel because I felt the questions that we wanted clarification to would be difficult for Attorney Cipriano to answer, where he had been working so closely in advising the zoning board. So we're not challenging him. The questions we have not been answered specifically by him to us. We haven't asked. We have questions mainly, I think, about procedure in two categories. One is history, and frankly, I think we were After struggling with that, I think we were about ready to say, okay, we don't agree with it, but let's move on. The other is now and future. So the history is all of the waivers that from our various codes, mainly the zoning code, but waivers of planning board regulations among them that have been given by the zoning board to the developer. And I've got to back up on that for a minute too, because the ZBA has done, I think, a fantastic service to the town in its negotiations with the developer for some of the physical properties of that site. And the one big one, of course, if you've heard about it, is the developer has agreed that the affordable housing project will be rentals. And I won't go into the detail, but that provides a great benefit to the town in terms of state regulations that require us to have a certain number of affordable units. So I think that's great. It's really all process. As I said, the historical things were the waivers, and one big item, which was the zoning board's decision to take control of the site plan regulation, which is the planning board's probably least enforceable but most valuable regulation, because it is the one that gives us some leverage to negotiate. And the planning board was left with a new piece of regulation that the zoning board called the residual site plan. And frankly, out of all of the things in site plan review, it left 4 somewhat insignificant areas which the zoning board assigned to the planning board. And there is no such thing as a residual site plan review. This is a made-up regulation. But the waivers are behind us. There are some questions we have about them that we'd like to understand. And we thought we were ready to move on from there until March 24th of this year, when the developer asked for a whole new set of waivers. I shouldn't say that. I think some of them were repeats of waivers they had already asked for. But new waivers, some of them affecting the affordable housing project. The planning board understands that rule. The zoning board is totally in control of the 40B project, and that's not an issue for us. But some of them were for the 40A project, which is the very large townhouse project that sits physically next to the affordable housing project. So the waiver cycle has started again. And I think we've got a concern about, is this ever going to end? And some of the waivers we think are in conflict with the waivers that were granted with the use variance for the townhouse. One of the conditions of that was that the private road inside the project, the development, would be built to the town's subdivision standards. And now in March 24th, they're in asking for waivers from that regulation. The big issue, and I've been saying this, the issue that I think is the most important, and if we narrowed it all down to one issue that we could get you to agree to let us get independent counsel to advise on, is how much or what can the developer and the zoning board put of the non-affordable housing elements of the 100-acre parcel, how much of that can they include under the relaxed 40B regulations? And they've got this theory now of calling this a integrated site development. And they have said, one of the residents questioned this at the March 24th meeting of when we were going to talk about the townhouse project, and the answer was, we're doing it. The retort to that was, well, this is a public hearing on the 40B, the affordable housing. How can we be talking about the townhouses? And the answer was, because we voted that we would include it. They can't do that. And I'm not a betting man, but I'd certainly make a bet the town council would agree. Now, there are some things we think they probably can include. My reading is, of the regulation, is that they can include things, but not residential things. They can include like a wastewater treatment plant and so forth. So I'm going on with too much detail, but we need some help. We ask for the right to ask special counsel not to sue anybody, not to file any challenges, but to do some research for the planning board on the regulations and procedure. We do these in specific areas where we believe, we've been told, that town council has advised the zoning board already. We think if we were now to ask the same or similar question of town council, we hope he would feel awkward answering for us. If he's not, I guess that changes the ballgame. But
And he's here, which is good. And,
Yeah.
and not that we're looking to get into a legal debate on the substance of any of the issues
we
presented
can't do
tonight.
that because he'd win.
He is good.
He knows a lot more about this than I do.
And if I had to presume, I'm confident that he would be able to provide you that guidance that you're looking for without hesitation. So I actually would love to hear from him if
Yeah. I don't know if there's other points that the
Yeah, let me
planning
make
board wants to
one
make
other
first.
point. When I asked about what are the standards, we're not here looking for money. The circumstance of not having a town planner has left some money in our budget, and we're not talking about a big, drawn-out assignment.
Wasn't that money that you're looking to utilize specifically directed through town meeting towards the planner?
I don't know the answer to that, Don. I was told that our town planner, when she was here, checked and found that we could use it, but I don't know the details of that.
We submitted a note to the town administrator today saying that the decision here to grant independent counsel should not be based upon funding. It should be based on the merits of the concerns of the planning board. If after you vote and you vote to grant authority to hire special counsel, then we would address the issue of funding. But when you ask if that funding was appropriated by the town meeting for the purpose of giving it as a salary to the town planner, and now we don't have a town planner, then what happens to the money? Who gets to use it?
So, but I'm confident I'll hear from, maybe Mr. Purple can let us know, but to
Again-
repurpose those funds, and again, I'm still not convinced, you're persuasive, but I'm not convinced, and I think there's a greater harm that could happen if we end up doing this, but you know, I'm also not convinced that there is even any funds available, because they haven't been purposed towards something like this.
So just to speak to the issue of whether or not they could use those funds, assuming they are available, given the elected status of the board, they do have the ability to repurpose those funds as if they are available. I don't know at this point what is left in that line item.
There's over $40,000. But again, we had hoped that the discussion would be based on the merits of our request, and that you would decide on that. And then if we got to the point where it was approved, then we would get into the rules of following the rules of using the funding in a proper manner.
Yeah, Mr. Jenks, you brought up money, and you said, we're not asking for money, and I would agree with you, or I would agree with what's been said here. I don't think the decision here should be based on where the money comes from. We just stick with the merits.
Thank you. I can conclude by just making a plea that planning board is looking for a tool that it feels would be very helpful in trying to regulate this very big project. This, I'm told, could end up being 10% of the population. It's on 100 acres, and I don't even know how many units or what impacts there may eventually be. But the town voted certain regulations, like the zoning code, and we would like to see these left in place and not waived. Having said that, it's not uncommon for the planning board to waive portions of its regulations. We don't waive another board's regulations. We don't grant variances, although maybe we should, but that's a whole different story. So the planning board is looking for your support to help us with a tool that we as an elected body think would be very helpful to us.
Mr. Stein?
Thank you. I think Mr. Jenks did a fantastic job of articulating the board's position on this matter. The only thing I would add to that is to address a comment Mr. Kalenda made that this sets a potentially bad precedent or dangerous precedent. It's a truly unprecedented scope and scale of the project that's before the ZBA and before us in terms of the residual review. So I feel that we would be remiss in our duty as a planning board if we did not advocate for every possible resource and tool to review the nuances and the complexities of this project, with all due respect to town council, whom I think does fantastic work, as well as many have said tonight. This is a big deal for this town, and we would just want to make sure it gets done right. So we really appreciate your consideration of this. Thank you.
Mr. Cipriano.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. Under my watch, and I know it would be expected of me by former town councils, we have to remind what my duty and responsibility is on the record. And that is that I am the legal advisor to the town, all town boards. I represent the municipal corporation of the town of Southborough, not any individual board. When I was assigned to meet with the Zoning Board of Appeals on the issues before them, the initial issue that I had to address was whether or not the planning board had a role in site plan review. Initially, there appeared to have been a determination that they did not. We came to the conclusion that they did in fact have a role, and an expanded role. And notwithstanding the specific areas that were identified in the ZBA decision under a use variance, we added additional language under that decision that reflected the zoning bylaw language. The theory of that was to afford the planning board, and representing the town at this point, it was in defense of the planning board and had nothing to do with the Zoning Board of Appeals, except that they miscalculated that interpretation. That they would have that opportunity with engineered plans, which I also found out early in the process were not furnished. Subsequently, those plans have been furnished, an application for site plan review has been made, and it's pending before the planning board, and my responsibility continues to be to go to those planning board meetings and to assist them in their site plan review. I think maybe they have forgotten that, but that's the primary responsibility. As to the March 24th waiver meeting, with the Zoning Board of Appeals, I think everybody who saw that I disagreed substantially with some of the procedure that had followed on that meeting, because waivers had to be reconsidered. And there is an expanded role in the planning board in that regard also. But in terms of utilizing special counsels, they are normally utilized if there is a need for specialized counsel to assist town council, or if town council has some form of an inability to address an issue because of other work. Neither of those exist. This does set a very dangerous and bad precedent, because you will start having your legal advisor. This is not a question of having your legal advisor second guess. This is not a question of supporting town council in an effort to protect the town. It is an effort to check or conflict with our opinion, and then have the town spend money on both ends of the issue, taxpayer money, in conflict with each other. We can address the issues the planning board has submitted. They never asked me those questions. Ultimately, what I'm seeing is a adversarial relationship between the planning board and the ZBA that really has to end. The animosity is increasing, and it bothers me because I know that people and developers will take advantage of that. For those reasons, I don't think you need a special town council.
Okay, so any other comments? Dan?
No, just ready to make a motion if you're ready.
Well, there's,
We
I'm
have
sure,
other
plenty of
comments, but-
people that did come here to be able to speak. So I do want to give people a chance to talk. If you do, please use the microphone over there. Please state your name, address, and if you do hear repeat comments, there is no need to keep saying things over and over, but we do want to hear the comments that you did come to bring.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Angelo Catanzaro, I represent Mr. DePietri. I'm an attorney in Ashland, and I have represented him through this entire permitting process. And I think what's important for this board to keep in mind in making this decision, okay, and you know, I'm another Aldo fan. He has done a tremendous job. He has participated in almost every level of what has gone on with this project. And I think that he has given it a tremendous amount of thought and insight. And to me, anyway, as a brother attorney, it does appear to me that he's being second-guessed. That's the way it appears to us. As property owner, Mr. DePietri has certain rights also. We started the development of Park Central as purely a 40B affordable housing project. We were approached as for sale project. We were approached by the town, okay, spearheaded by the ZBA chairman, okay, who thought that a rental project would be far preferable than a for sale project, which we had proposed to build, to be followed by several other for sale projects on the site. This was all common knowledge. Mr. Bartolini thought it would be best for the town if this site would be for a rental 40B, which meant the town met its affordable housing quota for 30 or 40 years to come, and the town would never have to deal with another 40B for that period of time. approached us if we would consider that. At the same time, okay, there was the topic of perhaps planning this entire area as some sort of affordable or reasonably priced, moderately priced residential area that also fit some of the other towns' means. And in fact, those conversations were held with then town planner Jennifer Burney. I mean, this was open conversations about what would be the best way to use the Park Central area. We had our concept, the town officials, the town planner had what they thought was a better idea. We were then encouraged to discuss the overall plan with the abutters. We spent 9 months negotiating an agreement with the abutters which addressed the immediate neighbors' concerns, okay? There was no requirement for us to do that under Chapter 40B had we developed the site as under 40B, okay? And we made some serious concessions to these abutters. This was at the insistence of the ZBA. The ZBA, okay, essentially directed us, okay, and said, if you know, to make this go smoother, would you consider meeting with the ZBA? I mean, with the abutters, and we did. And we entered a comprehensive settlement agreement with the abutters that eliminated a lot of their concerns, connection of roads to their neighborhood, relocation of the 40B apartment buildings from behind their neighborhood to the other side. But in every negotiation, there's a give and take. And the give and take in this particular negotiation was, well, we needed the ability to build these moderately priced townhomes, okay, and we needed to have the appropriate permits to do it, okay? But we also needed to have a site that was integrated and that could be constructed all at one time. The town, I don't know whether or not he was retained, but I presume he was, hired Ed Marchant, who was a 40B consultant, to mediate our discussions with the abutters, okay, and to come up with a comprehensive resolution. And part of that resolution was a use variance. Now, the Zoning Board of Appeals is a body appointed by this board, okay? They have a lot of authority under the zoning code, including the right to grant variances. Southborough is one of the few towns that remain that have use variances. And use variances, okay, give the zoning board the authority to change the potential use of a property from the zoning district in which it's in. The Zoning Board of Appeals also has the authority to grant variances under the zoning bylaw. Now, what's interesting in this instance, the use variance that was granted by the zoning board, okay, directed that the site was going to be developed as an integrated site with the 40B, which we suggested and our engineer suggested would make the whole site make more sense, because if you're going to be building a road network and drainage, et cetera, that was discussed at the open hearings.
Counselor, if I may? So this is neither a planning board meeting or a ZBA, and we won't be able to have that amount
Of
to
detail.
detail, and we can't litigate it here.
Okay.
The issue before us is whether or not to hire special counsel. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't think that you need a special counsel at all, and I think what the board needs to do is to think about what is the impact that's going to have on this project. We have spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars developing the site plans, okay, in reliance on the variance, which was issued in reliance upon Mr. Cipriano's opinion, and I think that as an owner and a developer, that we should be allowed to continue to rely on that. Hiring another attorney to give another opinion could very well undermine that entire process. Keep one last point in mind. The site plan approval process under your zoning bylaw, if we are not satisfied with it, we appeal it to the zoning board. The zoning board uses the same consultants as the planning board. This is not going to be a project that is not reviewed and is not analyzed and is not, and all the Ts are going to be crossed and all the Is are going to be dotted. It's just a different head, okay, with the same purpose.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to make a comment? Please get to a microphone. Sam?
Thank you. Sam Stivers, 7 Presidential Drive, member of the advisory committee, but speaking as a private citizen. I guess I don't think this is such a big deal. At a practical point here, I've spent the last couple of decades being responsible for my company's legal budget in my real job, my day job. And We spend a lot of money on inside counsel, outside counsel. We get second opinions from other counsel all the time. I find those very valuable often, and it seems to me it's not a bad expenditure. Given that the planning board apparently has some money to do this, it would seem to me to be not a bad check and balance in the process here. So, I mean, it sounds like it's sort of devolving into a turf or ego issue here, but it's a common practice out there in the world, and it's sometimes a very valuable thing. So it seems to me it's a reasonable thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening, Howard Rose, 2 Bantry. First, and forgive me, I don't have all my thoughts together. If you go to the doctor and you get an opinion, you usually get a second opinion, whether you believe your doctor or not. It's no much different here. I think you need to also acknowledge from the public side of this project has a very large stench of impropriety. It is a mess. Coming down from, I don't even think there's a quorum when the ZBA meets. There's only 3 people on that board, and I think our laws say 4. From that point forward, everything seems to be skipping something in the system, bypassing something. The planning board is just simply asking for another opinion that's not already attached to this. I think there's, even just to show the that we are doing the right thing, make some kind of gesture to the people of this town, not the 6 abutters who signed an agreement, but the rest of the town that are gonna have 3,000 cars going down there right in front of their school. The rest of the town has not been part of this process, has not had their say, and the rest of the town is one who's gonna end up paying for this when there's the 200 kids coming into our schools that this project is gonna do. All the planning board is doing is asking, we've taken 2 projects, a 40B and a 40A, and we've merged them. And we keep saying they're separate, but every meeting we have, they're merged into one project. Make no thing, this is great, you know, it could be a good project. I'm not actually against the project. But as far as saying how the attorney for Mr. DePietri got up here and said how they made all these concessions, we are taking 4 years off his project and not limiting his projects. If this was a 40B, there would be a limit on how much profit he can make on this. There has been nothing that is an advantage to the town here. The planning board is just saying they want their piece to say, make sure that it's being done right and follow the books. We have done nothing to follow the rules. All we're asking for, and I think you should grant them the ability to just have a second opinion, another lawyer working perhaps with town council, but to come up and review the case law and see if there's a way to do it. The money is already there. There's no real harm or foul to just do it and put some people at rest. We could find that the opinions were completely correct and we can move on. But if there's something that needs to be addressed, this is our one chance to do it, and I think you should take that opportunity. This board has been incredibly quiet on this thing, and I know you have to by law. This is the first time I think it's even been on the agenda in the 3 years it's been going. Please, I know you guys have been watching in the sidelines. Take the opportunity to step back, have the opinion to make sure that the town is doing it right, because I don't think we are at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Don?
Don Morris, Planning Board. And I know I spoke before, but this is the largest project in the history of the town. And it's been going on, the process has been going on for several months, as we stated. There are things that have been occurring, actions taken by the ZBA that we don't think are proper. We've sat by, we've hoped that it got better, we've hoped that there would be a procedure that would allow for the special permit granting authorities to use those authorities and not have them taken away by the ZBA. We got to a point where we felt that we cannot continue to sit and do nothing. We need to be advised. We need to know if the procedures taken by the ZBA are in fact proper. And if they are, the ZBA will have a hardworking partner in the planning board to bring the project across the finish line. If they're not, and I know that's your concerns, what if we get council that finds areas where procedures were not properly followed? That opens up the discussion. What is the corrective action? It's not just to identify areas of concern, it's also to identify corrective action, so that when this project gets approved, it's approved by the right people with the proper authority. I'm going to read something, you have it, which states that the planning board has a long and respectful relationship with town council. Town council has advised and guided the ZBA in matters relative to the Park Central projects. Because the planning board has concerns about the zoning board of appeal, about the actions of the ZBA, it's appropriate for the planning board to seek advice from an independent counsel. In no way will the planning board participate in any type of battle between councils. This is an opportunity to get a second opinion, to address the concerns of the planning board. I still cannot understand why seeking a second opinion to determine if all the process to date and going forward is correct. Why is that a concern? It shouldn't be a concern. It should be welcomed. And it is in no way a reflection, a negative reflection on the town council. And we wouldn't put up with that. We rely on council also. But in this case, independent counsel is appropriate. Once again, first statement that we made was the planning board has no intention to stop the proposed projects, only to assure that the town's regulations are followed. If there was a component of this project that included a restaurant, and the zoning board of appeals said it's approved, including the liquor license, it's all part of the 40B. Would the selectmen go along with that? I don't think so. It has to do with overreaching into other boards' authorities. If independent counsel feels that everything is appropriate, as I said, the planning board will hold hands. If not, then we should all work together to find the corrective action. So at the end, it's done right.
Anybody else with comment? Aldo, please. Yep.
First off, I heard a comparison to private law firms. It has nothing to do with the bylaws of the town, and this is not an ego trip. This is protection of the position of town council. And some of the comments made look like they are undermining or indicting what I have given for a legal opinion, notwithstanding the comments of the chairman. I view that as disingenuous patronization. If you read the draft, it is filled of these legal questions, it is filled with comments negative to a regulatory agency of the town. Concerns about actions of the ZBA, ZBA overreaching, ZBA tampering with planning board regulations, ZBA overreaching beyond their authority. Let's just talk about the practicality. If a second lawyer is brought in and he gives a different, or she gives a different opinion, then whose opinion ultimately prevails? Is it the general town council or is it the special counsel? And if there is a conflict, what is the developer going to do in terms of those interpretations? And finally, does that reach us to a point where the two town councils inform with, in reference to the agencies they may represent, if that's the case, now have to go get a declaratory judgment before a court at the taxpayer's expense? This is just absolutely ill-conceived and ill-advised. Thank you.
Lee.
Leo Bartolini, Chairman of the Zoning Board. The major issue with this project from day one was when the developers and the neighbors also had a special town council that represented the neighbors. And when we were doing the use variance approval, the issue was brought up that the site plan be reproved through the zoning board under the 40B rules and regulations. And that was a major discussion, and Mr. DePietri and his attorneys agreed on it. The board had some discussions on it. I personally wasn't 100% in favor of it, because I thought there's certain things that, the planning board on the use variance site should have been involved in. And I am the one that convinced the board publicly that they would take, and we put the 4 conditions on to go to the planning board, and everybody agreed to it. We had a second attorney, which was Mr. Dan Hill, which represented the neighbors, which set forward for this to be done this way. If that had not happened, the zoning board would not have done what they did. We've had many use variances and projects in front of us that we've never done this to before, but it was requested, and the major request on this was that Mr. DePietri agreed to do a rental project for the town of Southborough in lieu of us agreeing to support the different issues on the use variant project for the town. We have eliminated 588 units on this property. We're down to 346, I think. There's a few numbers that have changed a little bit. The tax issue on this project for the town of Southborough, if it was the 555 units for the 40B project with the regulations of the 10% of the 3 bedrooms and stuff, would basically cost the town, when we're all done with school money and everything.
Keep it to the issue at hand, the special town council.
Say that again?
Keep the discussions and comments specific to the question before us on the
Okay,
Special town
my
council.
statement is for the fact that what we've done and the way we've done it has been in favor of the town properly, and we have made comments, the waivers that we approved were done, and they were done on issues that were in front of our board that weren't going in front of the planning board. So there is no reason to have a special town council. Mr. Cipriano has worked with us from day one when we started this project, and the abutters had an attorney. I requested Mr. Purple to give me permission to use town council, which he talked to the board back then, and it was done. Town council has gone along with us, and we have discussed the issues as we've gone forward, and that's the way we've done it, and it's, personally, I feel it's been very legal, and I see there's no reason why we need any other councils to change what Mr. Cipriano has done for the town.
Thank you. Anybody else with comments? Yes.
John Green, 10 Tower Road. I think just sitting here and listening to this whole process has been a bit of an embarrassment to the town, also to the board who elects the ZBA directly. As a private citizen, I really think that we just need to have a fair process going forward with this. The ZBA seems to be unilaterally making these decisions, right? Sidestepping planning, sidestepping conservation, sidestepping safety, right? Huge for 40B. The Mass Dot is saying they want to close, they will not allow Mr. DePietri to bring any traffic out of Park Central. But it's okay to move all that traffic 200 yards back to Flag Road. How is that even possible? And the ZBA never even batted an eyelash. Nobody even said anything. I think the only complaint I've heard out of the ZBA has been whether or not we can go ice skating, right? It's crazy. A project of this size, right? 10% increase to the population, 3,000 cars down a country road that can't support it, that leads to a school, is crazy. And I think it's the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen to step up. And this is your opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Sir, did you have a comment?
Chris Perkins, 1 Terra Road. I'm a butter to this project. The conflict between the planning board and the zoning board I found very unbecoming. I've been at the ZBA meeting when Mr. Cipriano was presenting his views, and the zoning board just completely disregarded his opinions. So what I'm looking for is, like others, that the process be fair, that it be complete. I value the planning board's input to this project, and so far it has felt like they have been shut out. So whether we have a special counsel or not, that's not important to me. What's important to me is that this project be done right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none. Any other discussion? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Dan.
So, prior to the motion, I will strongly suggest that the chairs of the ZBA and the chair of the planning board meet with town council, discuss the issues they have, and also ensure that the process is fair and everyone is heard and everyone is, so we don't have misunderstandings like this. We do have one town council who has been outstanding for us. He has advised us that he is available. He has advised us that he is not conflicted. He has also advised that this, and I agree with him, would be a dangerous precedent. And I will concur with town council and make a motion that we not approve the hiring of special counsel.
Is there a second?
I want to make a comment first. There's a lot that was said tonight that I discount. And what I mean by that is this. For example, the procedural history that Attorney Catanzaro gave, very accurate. But nobody's suggesting that Mr. DePietri has culpability here. You know, the idea that that he might pull the plug if we go the wrong way tonight is not part of my consideration. Yes, this is very, very unprecedented. The size and scope of the project, the process up to this point. You know, I think the idea that we would or wouldn't set a precedent with this decision is not part of my consideration. So I want to be clear about that. I believe town council's duty to the town would compel him, and he can tell me if he believes otherwise, would compel him to inform and or make very clear, very obvious to both our board and the citizens of town any impropriety or any improper actions by any board or committee or otherwise as regards this process. Apparently, he has not been asked the specific questions that are in this draft that the planning board put together, as he indicated. On the other hand, if the issues that the planning board has presented have merit in town council's opinion, I don't believe he needs to wait to be asked, right? And again, tell me if you disagree, but I believe that his duty to guide and advise the town would encompass any issue of impropriety or otherwise illegal actions by any board or committee. As a result of that, I'm of the mind that we are well considered to take that into account. And I would suggest that we are not at a point right now, based on town council's previous advice and guidance and or lack thereof, if he chose to decide there wasn't a need, that the specific questions that the planning board has are grounds to hire a special counsel. That being said, I do agree with Mr. Kalenda that this is not the end of this issue. That if I could paraphrase, and if I paraphrased you wrong, Dan, I apologize. I'll just say it for myself. I don't believe this is the end of this issue. I believe the planning board, as an elected board, has a great sovereignty, and their concerns are my concerns as a selectman. They ought to be town council's concerns. I believe they are. Whatever the planning board decides to do as a result of tonight's vote, I will support them 100%. Insofar as they are a sovereign board, an elected board, and deserve that regard. With that having been said, I will second Mr. Kalenda's motion.
The motion was made, seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. 3-0. Is John back there?
Why don't we take a 2-minute
Okay.
recess?
2-minute recess? Yep.
Next item on the agenda, Mr. Ballantyne, relative to the renewal of opt-out provision for health insurance. Mr. Ballantyne, good evening, welcome.
Good evening. So on to hopefully a quicker, easier agenda item. The health insurance opt-out, I don't know, most of the board, I believe, is familiar with it, was last done in FY 14, fiscal year 14, as an initiative to mitigate, the health insurance premium costs. I think me and the town administrator have been before the board before to talk about the health insurance benefits and the cost to the town, which is a very large line item in each year's budget. So again, just very, very quickly, there's a number of tools we try to do to offset that fiscal impact, that expense, and this was one of them. We did run it 3 years. There was a provision in there to renew for, at the end of June for this year, and we're recommending it be another 3-year renewal. It was very successful. I think if you look at the memo, we saved, in excess of $90,000. I'm sorry, $150,000 since the program began. And annually, it's about roughly $90,000 we're having as premium avoidance costs of people that are, getting a small, sort of a small stipend or a small payment in their check every paycheck so that they elect to go on alternative health insurance. It works for some people. It's a very individual choice. We've had a number of inquiries other than the ones that have taken advantage of it. Some people have decided not to go with it. But we have had a number of school people and town people elect for it. So it's a great little program. It's not going to, solve all our fiscal issues, but it's another tool in the tool bag that we're trying to use with a number of other things to mitigate the, our budget. So I recommend that we renew this program. Not much was changed in the language, very little. It was mostly very minor language that I think I highlighted. Might have only been 2 sentences, actually. Other than that, it's exactly the same. And again, I would recommend that we renew that.
Yeah, the question that I had, and I suspect question that other members had, is what possible reason, is there a municipal reason why we would be opposed to this?
I don't see why you'd be opposed to it. That's why I said it was an easy discussion, I was hoping.
That's the only question I had. Does anyone have any questions?
Just one quick question. One of the changes that you did make in the first paragraph looks like this is to provide incentive for employees currently covered under the town's health plan.
Yes.
So so if someone were to be hired this year, they cannot not get insurance and be eligible for this
They could not.
bonus, correct?
Correct.
So if they, let's say a new hire started this year, and then at a year from now, they could opt in, correct?
2 years from now.
2 years from
It's a
now.
2-year provision, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. That's the only question I have.
Motion?
Mr.
Anyone?
Chairman, I move that we renew the Town of Southborough Health Insurance Opt-out Program policy as printed in our packet.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next item, Chief Paulus, relative to proposed staffing change. Good evening, Chief. We have read your material that was in our packet. Perhaps if you could just give a very brief summary to those that have not read it, as to why you're proposing a staffing change.
Sure. Just asking for a staffing change of adding a 5th sergeant supervisor to the police department. I think it'd be both a benefit to the department and would allow us to provide some better service to the citizens. The added position would go to a swing shift, which would be 7 at night to 3 in the morning, which is most critical times of coverage. I think some of the current concerns that I've had in the last year was addressing the manpower issue. And I think that we've developed a great plan going forward with the town administrator, the finance director, and also advisory about increasing our manpower staffing during the 2nd and 3rd shift. That being said, I also have a concern about the supervisory coverage. We currently have a supervisor assigned to every shift, but that doesn't account for every single day that one of those supervisors takes off due to vacation, sick leave, personal leave, training, scheduling issues. So as a result, we go about 1/3 of the time without a supervisor of rank on a shift. That being said, in all but the smallest department, the professional standard would be to have a sergeant of person of rank on duty at all times. I realize that we're kind of evolving into that as time goes forward. This would serve to fill some of that gap, like I said, especially between the most critical times of 7 p.m. and 3 a.m. And the good news is that I can fund it right in my budget. We have some staffing changes taking place where there's a specialty pay, and then also the officers do get $1 per hour to act as the officer in charge when there's none available. And from the monies from those 2 accounts and maybe a little bit out of the reserve line item, we can fully fund it in-house. Also create some additional advancement opportunities to increase some morale in the department. So I see it as a win-win, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Smino?
Are the adjustments to your budget that you're making to cover this, are those adjustments that could be made in future years as well? In other
Yes.
words, this is covered permanently, not just for this year?
Yes, they would be permanent adjustments.
Thank you, that's all.
Mr. Kleiner?
Nothing. I think your proposal incredibly well written and thought out. And I think it's, being able to provide others opportunities for growth in the department is huge. And the coverage that you'll get out of it, I think, is key, and I'm fully supportive.
Thank you.
Mrs. Faniff?
One question, Chief. The officer in charge, are you eliminating that, or is that still, in practical sense, still, the funds are still gonna be there, even with this new shift?
There'd be a reduction in those funds. Their only expenditure comes is when a supervisor of rank isn't on duty. So this would cover probably 2/3 or maybe a little less than 2/3, so that line item will come down probably by about 1,500.
Right, so we're not leveraging it to a point that we will not be able to cover a shift at all when necessary.
No,
toward the
this
end.
is going to be a supplementation of manpower. We're going to add one to the staffing of the department coming up. My plan was to put that person or the extra body on that swing shift anyway.
Okay.
So if we make it a sergeant's position, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can get extra staffing, and I can get a supervisor in a position, which is going to help out two shifts, because we work 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. So on a swing shift, I'd have a supervisor kind of seeing both shifts.
As long as we're not gonna run a deficit and you're not gonna be able to cover the shift. I understand what you're doing, but I just didn't want you to leverage the budget too much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shea?
No additional questions.
Chief, I echo Mr. Calenda's comments. The only problem, I think, and I guess it's a good problem, is that you have such a tremendously talented staff of officers who may be in line for this promotion. It's gonna be difficult to select one, but
It's a good problem to have.
that's why you make the big bucks. Do you need us to vote on this, or is this just informational?
We need to vote.
We need to vote?
I would move, Mr. Chairman, that we vote to approve the proposed staffing change as printed.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
I'd just like to say that you've all been incredibly supportive of the police department during my tenure, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Ms. Galligan, update on Main Street project, please. Sure. You need us to recess, or?
Is it wireless?
It is, because someone broke the wire. Someone ran over it with their chair.
If we had the ability for it to be wireless all this time.
We'll see if we have the
Should've
ability,
been.
we'll see if we have the ability right now.
I didn't need a recess. All right, thanks for letting me talk to you guys tonight about this. What I wanted to just take a chance, since annual town meeting obviously came up, and we did not get we didn't get the authority, the selectmen didn't get the authority to get the easements for the Main Street project. I wanted to take a minute to kind of re-go through, explain the project, debunk some of the issues that are out there that aren't factual, and also just, again, see what the selectmen really want to do. We need to make the decision for the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We're in the Boston region. That's who's granted us this money to do this project. So I basically need to come up with a decision tonight to be able to talk to them on Thursday. But I just want to take the time, just bear with me. I know a lot of it's stuff you guys already know, but there's people out there who don't. And it's also just a helpful process, I think, to go through, so that just as a reminder. So basically, I'm going through the frequently asked questions. What is the project? It's a roadway project. We're addressing infrastructure issues, pavement safety issues. The road is in failure. It has been for ages at this point. And this project is based on trying to repair these problems, make the street better. Obviously, everyone can tell the pavement's not good. And it's funded through a different system, as you'll see as we go on. So what are the infrastructure issues? We have poor subsurface. That makes the pavement bad. Just fixing the pavement and not fixing subsurface doesn't last. It creates problems for, basically, you spend $100 to fix a square yard of pavement, and in 3 years, you're gonna spend $100 again. That doesn't work. What this project is proposing is a 20-inch, I'm sorry, 20 feet, 20-inch, basically full-depth reconstruction of the road in order to give us a good subsurface and 8 inches of new asphalt. Another thing, obviously, you need good drainage in order to be able to have the subsurface stay healthy. We have some definite drainage issues on Main Street. It's, the grades are very funny. There's old corrugated pipe, and as you can see, there's just outflows and inlets that are just an open pipe. Also, the grading, if you look in that top picture, you can see how the sidewalk is actually below the street right there. The stone wall over on the right of the sidewalk is barely up over the sidewalk. You can see it over in the far right picture, also the bottom picture. You can see how the sidewalk is flat with the street, but the street's actually higher once you get over to the fog line. Intersections are safety issues that we're addressing. They're being narrowed, so they're easier to cross. There was a lot of input and feedback on that, on the intersections getting tighter up, especially down at Park Street. Sightline at Middle Road intersections being improved so that you can pull out if anyone's ever tried to pull out. It's very difficult to pull out there. They're adding a turning lane. It's a 10-foot wide lane at 85 and 30. That actually helps people when they queue up, that they're not going to try to like squeeze out the left turn really quick, or people are dashing by going straight and when the light changes on them. The sidewalks, they're being better defined with curbing, and a 4-foot shoulder is being added, so there's a buffer between the travel lane and the sidewalk. This shoulder makes bicycle travel safer. The bicycle travel, this is just, it's within that, you guys all know the fog line is the white line on the right, and you got the yellow line in the middle. Between the fog line and the curb, that's the shoulder that's also going to be used as a safe zone for a bicycle. How long has it been planned? This project's been going on for 16 years. Back in 1999, the road was in failure. John Boland had started saving up Chapter 90 money, trying to do the project. As he was looking at it, he realized there was subsurface work being needed, that picture I showed you of the sidewalk being too low. He saw that was happening, and he said, we actually have to pay for some design work on this. It's outside of the realm of a regular project. So they did design. It was presented at a Selectmen meeting in 2006, which I didn't put on the slide, but there was, they changed this TIP funding program that we'll talk about in a minute, so that there were more guidelines instead of being such rigid rules to follow for the roadway. When that happened, part of the process is to contact and talk to the historical and conservation and planning. And there were public meetings. We met with all of them. We did some preliminary work with them. We did other work throughout the year. We got comments. We incorporated comments. Then we had residents coordinated meetings in 2008 in order to kind of talk about parking on Main Street. We had planning board and selectmen meetings that were joint, conservation, historical. The public safety officials were involved in all this, and our 25% design was submitted. It was rejected because it didn't meet it. That project went in with a 6-foot shoulder with the intention that people would park in that, and that's not safe. You can't park in a 6-foot shoulder. You can't even fit your whole car in there. But then when you open your door, now you're in the travel lane. What happens to bicycles? That's part of why it got rejected. When that ended up happening, we changed designers. We had public meetings to get feedback. Planning board voted to present, to support it. Selectmen voted to support it. But then in 2010, public safety officials said, you know what, you need to enforce no parking on the sidewalk down here. So they went, because there wasn't parking, they went and they added parking back in. Then there were all kinds of alternatives. I mean, you guys saw the stakes out on the common. This has all gone on, obviously, for years and years. 2012, we got a spot on this transportation improvement program, which is a funding schedule through state and federal funding. In 2014, the Main Street Design Working Group was created. That came up so that kind of to get a specific set of residents that people could voice their concerns through, because we were having trouble getting consistent and you know, you have a room of 50 people and you're gonna have 30 and 20 and 25 and 25, like, the people's opinions were all over the place, and that group was, helped look at the project, see what wanted to be changed, and get people's input and see what could be changed. There were 2 public hearings. In 2015, we developed the plans. Main Street Design Working Group finalized their recommendations. And then they did a couple more changes, and then in 2016, that's where we are right now. And the project will be removed from the TIP if we don't take some actions. So what is the Main Street project gonna cost Southborough residents? Nothing. Project is funded 100% through the Transportation Improvement Program. It's from federal and state programs. It's gonna cost the state and the feds $6.86 million, and that's the money that's been approved at this point, and that's what we're scheduled for on the TIP. Mass DOT, do they have to approve the project? Yes, they do. The TIP projects have to meet safety standards, engineering, guidelines, and directives for safe roadways. Now, pedestrian bike accommodations were laid out in our 2008 master plan, that's something that the town found important. ADA compliance, environmental, and historic sensitivity is included in any TIP project also. So it's important to know that this is, everyone calls it the state project or the state's design. It's the town's design that we've come up with based on guidelines, which we follow throughout town most times anyway, when we're constructing. So is it building a federal highway in town? We've all heard this, that it's straighter, it's faster, it's wider. No, it's not. The project uses federal and state funds and standards, but they're already used throughout town. We use drinking water standards that are federal. Our building codes and plumbing codes are federal and with some state parts to them. The fire safety standards are federal. We all live by state and federal guidelines all the time. The fact that we have the stripe in the center is yellow, that's a federal rule. That's not, I couldn't go and paint it pink, it would confuse everybody. The same with the fog line's white. That's, you drive with the white line to your right. We all know these rules. Stop signs are red and they're octagons. That's what they are. If they were green in Pennsylvania, you'd be confused, right? These are federal standards. How wide is the travelway? 22 feet. The project, right now, I've restriped the towns, and I know people have accused me of being drunk when I stripe them. I don't actually physically go and stripe these roads, but the fog line was based when we started doing this with the Main Street Working Group. I was trying to figure out a way to show them what a 12-foot lane was. I mean, 11-foot lane, I'm sorry, 11-foot lane, and I had them stripe the fog line 11 feet from the center line. And that's why there's two white lines a lot. The most inner lane is the 11-foot lane, and then you'll see another white line in a bunch of places, and that's how wide the roadway used to be, the travelway. Again, there's 4-foot shoulders, which give us the buffer for the sidewalks, and it also gives you a space for the bike. Currently, Main Street varies. If you go down to Sears Road, it's like 25 feet wide. The project doesn't just suddenly turn into 30 feet at that point. It does gradually increase, but the Main Street itself gets as wide as 38 feet when you get to downtown over by Park Street. The majority of the road is 30 feet wide. That's pretty much from the common east. From the west side of the common east stays at 30 feet wide already, currently. Are we taking land to widen the road? No, we're not taking land. It's permanent easements and temporary easements, which are needed in order to construct the roadway to allow parking to make turning radiuses for a bus. Most of anything used for the road itself, there's very few of them. One of them were already on someone's property. It'd be nice to straighten that out. A lot of the permanent easements are aerial, which just means the wires, the electric company or phone company, whoever it is that has the wire, they want 5 feet from your center of your telephone or your utility pole back. So if your property line falls within that 5 feet, they just want to be able to have access there and cut a branch back if they need to. How will the project improve 85 and 30? Well, by putting in the 10-foot travel lane, we already left turn lane on each approach. Like I said, it moves people a little bit more through the intersection. It will stop some of the delays or decrease the delays, and it will also, it'll stop people from the risky behavior that they do with kind of trying to rush the light. The through lanes will continue to be 11 feet wide. Will there be new sidewalks? In accordance with the master plan, yes. In fact, it actually talks about a sidewalk from Parkersville to Sears in the master plan. We're also adding them at the Fay Crosswalk, up Common Street to the townhouse, and then if you remember, we went through this for quite a while. So on the east side of Corderville, basically coming from Woodward up to Main Street, and then we also have them up to on the west side of Marlborough Road, going up to the northern entrance of the library. The intent, we had a sidewalk committee, if you guys remember, that this was a bit of a thing. And their recommendation is that Marlborough Road's a road that really could use a sidewalk, and we'll be able to continue from there up. The hope with, that the Main Street Working Group had originally, and I'm sure it's part of the master plan originally, having the sidewalks go all the way to Sears, is that once it gets onto State Road, when the state's not doing one of the 3R projects, which is a resurface, restore, or rehab, which is just maintenance, which is what they've done on their two ends of Main Street. Everyone's noticed those are paved, and they look nice. Much wider in a bunch of spots than we're talking. But when they actually go to do construction on that and do some improvements, it'd be great if they can get a sidewalk and get us over to Chestnut Hill, since we have this beautiful farm there. That would be nice to be able to walk, ride your bike to. It'd be great to be able to ride your bike down Main Street and take a right, and then someday actually get down to the MBTA station. Are we creating a bike lane through town? No, it's not a bike lane. A bike lane is generally a 5-foot lane, which is outside the shoulder, and then you have a travel lane. This is just, bike is accommodated in the shoulder of the road. So you've got sidewalk, you've got 4 feet of kind of a buffer, and then you've got this 11-foot travel lane for the cars. And one thing, I know people think, oh, well, geez, 11 feet, that seems so big. A lot of the DPW trucks are 10 feet wide to begin with. Now you've got a mirror sticking out from them. You've got, and if anyone's ever tried to walk on Corderville Road, you're on the sidewalk and you feel like you're gonna get hit by a mirror. You try to ride your bike on Corderville and, everybody's trying to work around you. So that's where this project basically makes this a more walkable, more bicycle-friendly community. Downtown will get paved as it's not part of this project. We do have some issues with downtown. If you can look at the Morrow's Market right there, I don't know what its name is now, but that front step is actually on the right of way. The building front is exactly on the line. There's not much we can do to make a space so that you can park your car and open your door and not hit a bicycle coming by and still have your traffic going by. So that's why this is actually going to be treated a little different. The intention originally was to use the Chapter 90 money that had been reserved that we haven't used up yet in design and in all our easement, to purchase easements from people, to use that to help maintain this piece of the project. So one thing you need to think about is what other projects are coming to Southborough. We're talking about a public safety building. Corderville Road, if anybody doesn't think that needs a lot of work, they haven't driven on it recently, that's at failure. We talk about community center, library I know has talked about additions. There's a lot of other projects coming that are gonna use millions of dollars, and if we have the opportunity to use $6.8 million of federal and state money, might be worth it. Now, what will the project look like? So these are renderings we had before. These are from near 84 Main Street. The picture on the left's existing. Picture on the right is the rendering. That's at Middle Road. Looking east. This is looking west at the public safety entrances. I still wrote Middle Road, that's wrong. Woodward Crossing, that's the Woodward Road crossing, you can see it up. As part of the Main Street Working Group, they determined that a brick crossing was going to be a nice look to the town, so that's why it's a little red up there. Examples in the area, this is two 11-foot lanes, 4-foot shoulder, 5-foot sidewalks with grass strips, which we recommended grass strips throughout as much of the project as we can. Here's another one. This is more with an asphalt, obviously an asphalt sidewalk, and it's right on the edge of the road. But those are, again, 2 11s, 2 4s, sidewalk on one side. This is typical, same thing, typical. This is going through a more less populated area. This is going through a little bit of a farm area. But these are all roads in the area with the exact same cross-section as we're talking about a Main Street. It's not a highway. This doesn't look all that much different from Main Street, except there's no potholes, and the lines are less wiggly. Other than that, this is very similar to what the project would be as far as the look, except we're planning on concrete sidewalks and grass strips, obviously, where we can fit them in. The biggest frequently asked question is, why can't we just do the project with our own funds? How does this work? It's hard to explain this easily so that people understand the concept of coming up with these numbers. So I was asked back before the meeting in the town meeting in 2014 to come up with what would be the cost to do it. And I did a quick, all right, if we were just gonna reclaim and pave this, and that was 25% design at that point, and I had just one sheet of paper, which was a quick summary from the consultant of, here's the project, the $6.8 million project. So here it is, and from that I was trying to gather up, okay, what do we need? I'm taking 30 feet straight through, I'm doing this. It doesn't include a ton of issues. It doesn't do anything to the intersection at all. It doesn't, that project wouldn't give additional grass areas. There was no issue with fixing any additional draining except just connecting to that one. There was one open pipe. That one would connect to stuff. The other ones, nothing was going to be done on. It wouldn't do decorative crosswalks. It wasn't going to do trees. It wasn't going to do concrete sidewalks. There was a lot of work that wasn't going to be done. That's why I tried to make this. Once we got the 75% design, these are the specs, not the spec book. These are the construction like notes and estimate. So it's 2 full books. So now at this point, I had our staff engineer go through that and said, all right, if we were just going to do a reclaim and pave and do minimal work as though we were treating another, now he had a little more. And I said, but we're going to have to do this one drainage. We're going to put in granite curbing. What's going to happen? And that's where he actually worked with real better numbers, better quantities. He actually went to, instead of our typical reclaim and pave, which if you've, God forbid, if you live on Henry Knox, I apologize because we took out your cable, but we reclaim 6 inches currently. And that's because the road is so out of shape and because there are so many problems with it. Once we had the 75% design, that's when they said, actually, we have to do full depth construction on this project. And when that happened, which is the 20 inches, this reclaim on the 2.2 million, if you look at that, so it used to be 0.92, went to 2.2. The 2.2 actually includes just 4 inches of asphalt, but it does reclaim at 12 inches. And instead of, it actually includes concrete sidewalks, so that should have an X on that, so that's a mistake. But on the other hand, I had someone else ask me, well, what if we did the project exactly as we could without any easements? And that's where you come up with the 5.3 million. So that is a full depth reconstruction. It doesn't do anything to the traffic lights. I mean, it'll get an updated traffic light, but it doesn't give you left turn lanes. It doesn't add a lot of sidewalks because you can't without some easements. So you can see that, but that's where the 5.3, and it originally on the selectmen's memo, you'll see it says 5. I changed it to 5.3 because there's project management's going to be involved, and there would have to be some sort of design that would still have to come up to change the project enough so that we could bid it without having any easements in it. Now, mind you, temporary easements, you can't really do anything to the project without a temporary easement, so I assumed that the request was without permanent easements, not just temporary easements. So we're talking $5 million of our own, and we don't quite get the same, we don't get the tree replacements to the same extent, but we wouldn't have tree removal because we're not taking any easements. We wouldn't do, you know, utility poles don't move, so that one that continuously gets hit at the corner of at 84 Main, that's gonna continue to get hit. There's a big gas vault at Sears, that doesn't get moved. So like I said, there's a lot of work that wouldn't get done if we don't go this route. So just a couple of quick things, because the slideshow's over. Yes, please.
Last slide back up there.
I think so.
I just want to make sure I understand. The difference between the 925,000 and the 2.25 million, as I understand it based upon what you said this evening, the 925,000 came about as an estimate that you did based upon your experience in doing roadway work in this town prior to receiving the 75% design plan, correct?
Correct.
And when you received the 75% design plan, you then found out, or it was, you then found out that we in fact needed to do a more subsurface replacement, 20 inches, and 8 inches of new asphalt, something which you had not calculated into the 925.
Correct.
And that's the difference. That's why the 925 went up to the 2.25, because you got additional information from the 75% plan that requires additional roadway work to the subsurface replacement.
Yes and no.
Okay,
Just
where's the no?
clarify.
Where's the no?
So, because we got the 75% and I found that out,
Yes.
instead of going the full 20, we didn't do, that's not funded at full depth. That 2.25 is a 12-inch reclaim. So it's actually mixing 12 inches of the earth instead of 6.
So the 2.25 does not reclaim the amount of roadway that would be reclaimed under the TIP project.
The tip doesn't do any reclaiming. It's a full depth, so they pull out 20 inches and give you 12 and 8. So the
All right.
2.2 million is a 12-inch reclaim, and you really would end up removing material and adding just 4 inches of asphalt.
So what you're telling us, and I'm sorry, just maybe I think I understand it, what you're telling us is to do this roadway the way that you do other roadways in town requires more subsurface work and would have a resulting cost of 2.25 million.
Yes.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
And again, it is just an estimate, so.
I understand.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me just, on that point though, John, the X's in those two columns are identical, so just visually, I don't get it. Like, you need another line for a 12-inch reclaim versus a 4-inch, or whatever you just said.
That's why I was having
And put the
difficulty.
X in the other box, so there's gotta be a
I'm trying to
difference.
squeeze it in, sorry.
That's
All
why
right.
I was having difficulty.
So it is slightly better.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it. I'm sorry to interrupt. You can continue.
No, you guys want to take your seats? Sorry. Or I can talk from here, it's up to you. So just to get into the MPO issue that we have, so we are currently funded at $6.86 million through the TIP and Boston Region MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. They meet on basically twice a month, but they met a little more recently. So on April 28th, I went there, I told them that, look, I know this happened at the meeting, but at town meeting, but I'm not sure if the town wants to give up the project as a whole, how they want to deal with it. There's supposed to be a special town meeting in the fall for public safety building, which I think might still be happening. And if not, or either way, maybe we can have a special town meeting for this project. And I asked them to please just hold off until I could talk to the selectmen, which you guys, I wasn't sure of your appointment, your meeting night that night. They seemed to kind of carry with that okay. They understood the issues of getting a 2/3 vote. But so there are a couple options that you just need to be clear on. If we were to, I mean, like I said, I'm not kidding about the fact that Corderville Road is actually going to cost us. That's a 3-mile road, and Main Street's only a mile and a little. Corderville Road is going to cost the town a lot of money. The design standards have changed again, and they would want a sidewalk on both sides. I'm not sure that we even have the right-of-way for that. This would be something that we would probably want to do as a dead exclusion. And there's a lot of problems on Corderville Road. But what ends up happening is, as that comes up, as the public safety, does the town want to give up the 6.86? And if they do, that's fine, especially, again, this project, it's been going on for 16 years. I think it's a good project. I think people did their due diligence. People were very involved. A lot of committees have weighed in on this, and we did get it on the tip. However, as long as everyone understands what the project is, and then they vote against it, it makes sense. But it just seems like there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I'd rather, however you want to vote, obviously, it doesn't really concern me except for what the project is. I'm trying to figure out what it would be otherwise, but it's just very important that you have good information, then you make your decision. We could try to change the project and just say, okay, we're just going to go, the common's a little controversial, we'll go from the intersection east. You try that. You could say that, no, we're going to go for the whole thing at a special town meeting in the fall, or, yep, we're good. We're going to try to figure out a way, like a local solution, doing exactly what we have out there. And I am concerned that a lot of that, there would have to be a cost obviously involved in that with engineering design, because as I showed you with the sidewalk issues, that's going to basically become a flume ride at some point, because you're going down the hill and you've got a stone wall holding the water and you've got the road holding the water, and I think you could probably surf down next to the Fay School. So it's just as long as people understand what the issues are with the project. And unfortunately, I need to go to them on Thursday. If the selectmen do want to continue to support this project, I would ask that one of you please accompany me so that we can get the point across that the elected officials are committed to the project. And if you're not, then that's different. Obviously, you don't need to come with me. I'll just go and tell them myself. So if you guys have any questions?
Sure. Where do I begin?
Uh-oh.
With all this? So, so we met, one of our meetings, it was late January, early February, Marty, where the whole easement issue came about, and we knew that we needed to, at some point in time, have easements voted. And we discussed a schedule for that, and our initial thought was not to move forward with the article at the April town meeting, that there just wouldn't be enough time. There were discussions back and forth. There were good reasons to delay a little bit. There were good reasons to go forward now. One of the reasons that I thought it would be good to go forward now is to give us an opportunity, if we weren't successful at this past town meeting, take some lessons learned and do a little bit more homework and gear up again to give it another shot. Now, having been through the last town meeting, on any article that had to do with easements, there was maybe one comment, one question that had to do with easements, and the rest of the discussion was we took a step 2 years backwards in time, and it was, once again, sea of asphalt, bigger, wider, faster, superhighway. We're diverting Route 9 traffic. So, despite 2 years of excellent work and over 30 meetings that the Main Street Design Working Group had, we just could not overcome that misperception. And that, from what I heard, was the predominant argument voiced that night. So, having said all that, there's a part of me that thinks that this project is right for the town. I have talked to a lot of people afterwards who were upset that the easement article failed, that the project will not be moving forward. They were really looking forward to the multi-use of the roadway for pedestrians, for bike use, and for improved traffic safety. I am leery about our chances of retaining the funding with this meeting coming up on, was it Thursday? From correspondence that I've seen, I just have a hard time believing that, even if we go to that meeting, that they're going to hold the money for us. And likewise, I just wonder if it's too much of an uphill battle, even if we do convince them to hold the money, to change that misperception that, or the perception that people have on the project. My opinion, it's a misperception, but I think it's a huge, huge battle, and I just don't know if, I mean, most of, the board members were there. They heard the arguments at town meeting as well. I would be curious to get their sense of, what chances we would have with this, once again, at a future town meeting.
So, Mr. Shea, I will say that I think there were many that I've spoken with that were very surprised and actually did not really know that that article meant that this project was either going to move forward or not. They saw it as easements, and I don't think there was any great understanding that this meant whether or not this project is now dead. And there are a lot of folks that, look at what we had at town meeting. There was, a handful of, percentage-wise of registered voters in town. It was an incredibly small number, but there are lots of people who traverse those roadways every day, who wait at that traffic light every day, who do just as Ms. Galligan was saying, and dart across to finally make their left after traffic has been winding back past the cemetery every day that didn't show up to town meeting. Now, if those individuals were better informed and galvanized to come out to a special town meeting, could the result be different? I think it clearly could. Otherwise, town members are going to be spending upwards of $5+ million of their own money to repave and resurface and fix some drainage issues on Main Street, doing it on their own dime. And there's not an infinite amount of money available. There's lots of other projects that need to be done. This is clearly one of them, but there's a gift here of almost $7 million from the state. It's not a highway. I've heard that too. It's not a highway. And I've heard others say, well, it changes the historical nature of South Row. Well, tell Wellesley that. Has anyone driven through downtown Wellesley? It's a beautiful piece of asphalt. Okay, they updated theirs. They have beautiful lighting. It's actually quite nice. It can be done with taste, and I'm quite confident ours would be as well. Communities change. There's no, I'm under no, misconception that, traffic is going to lessen. It's only going to get greater. And, those issues at Route 9. And also I've heard people say, well, it's going to be used as a thoroughfare now. Please, I can't imagine there are people in other towns that will somehow say to themselves, did you hear about that new, piece of asphalt down at, Route 30 and 85? There's a neat new left turn signal. Let's go try it out. There's not going to be this massive amount of traffic and suddenly everyone wants to traverse through Southborough because we've got new asphalt and fewer potholes. So I think there's a heck of a lot of misconceptions out there, and there's a lot better ways that we can spend the taxpayer money on other projects, especially when we've been given $7 million.
I see no reason not to support a fall town meeting. I was not in favor of the plan 2 years ago because I thought we lost a lot of green space. And I can't say enough with the committee that was put in place to bring back the green, the trees, add additional parkings, identified sidewalks that needed repair and improvement. I mean, even if we do it on our own, I think it's going to be like maintaining your home. We'll get one end of the street done, and before you know it, we'll be back at that end again. I have no problem having a special town meeting. I don't think we did a good salesmanship job. We didn't spend the time that was necessary on this project. It's a large project. I spent most of my summer, along with a lot of other people, attending the meetings. We needed visuals. We didn't have them. And I'm not blaming anyone. I just think we didn't spend the time on this project at town meeting to explain to the public what we were doing and what the end results were. And that's not to be critical. We're all visual people, and I don't think we had that. So I would hope that we'd take the time to have a fall town meeting.
I support bringing this back. I think one of the things that was most troubling to me in the original design was the size of the intersection, which has since been considerably shrunk with the departure of Ted's of Fayetteville, out of downtown. So yes, plenty of misconceptions. However, one item that was mentioned at town meeting by the opposition that is extremely concerning to me and needs to be addressed as we go forward is that cost overruns are not covered by the state. So we'll get our 6.8 million, and if the project ends up costing 8 million, we're going to have to come up with the other 1.2. I'll need to be convinced that we have a good mechanism for addressing that before I will vote in favor of it as a final, approval. I also believe permanent easements are the equivalent of taking land. So to say we aren't taking any land, I think is a little bit disingenuous, and I don't think we should be in the disingenuity business here. I think we need to be upfront about exactly what this project is and what it isn't. I think that what it is far outweighs what it isn't. And I think when it's all done, nobody was going to drive through downtown Southborough and say, what have they done to this place, right? It will be, anybody who's never seen it before and is seeing it for the first time will say, this is an amazing looking downtown. I've never been of the mind that just changing something automatically makes it worse. I do agree that more information and better information needs to be out there. I'm in favor of making that effort.
Does any member of the committee want to address this? Ms. Teely?
I will. We've not met since town meeting. So these are, I guess, these are recounting what's happened before then, rather than offering up any sort of reaction to what happened at town meeting, because we haven't met. So I really can't speak to that. What I will tell you is that the folks who were on the working group came to it from a variety of different directions. There were people at the beginning of the process who were at least very skeptical of the project. There were others who were at least moderately supportive. I don't think at the beginning of our process there was anybody who was a staunch, this has to be done come hell or high water. We worked through a year-long process of making every attempt to hear whatever anyone in the town had to say about the project. Aside from the simple things like the meetings being posted, there was ample opportunity for comment. Any comment that was made was taken seriously. Attempts were made to address it. And it's interesting, I think our mindset over the course of the process, originally, for instance, the intersection at 85 and 30, there were traffic engineering studies that were done about the time that would be saved. And I think, Mr. Rooney, at one of the meetings, you raised a question about exactly how much time are we saving here, and is that worth the expenditure? One of the things that became pretty apparent to I think everybody on the working group, and certainly was one of the factors that carried the day in our ultimate near unanimous support of virtually every aspect of the project, was the safety. And it's kind of remarkable because the main thing it doesn't create a thoroughfare. I think that there was opposition, and there has been opposition to the project, and throwing out terms like highway are emotional, and clearly it doesn't really widen the roadway hardly at all. What it does is it makes it safer. It makes it safer for cars. It makes it safer for pedestrians. It makes it safer for bicycles. It makes the Route 30/85 not a hit and miss opportunity when you're going across. It actually makes it safe to be able to take left-hand turns. It also makes it a much prettier roadway, and that really drove our decision-making. The idea that we get all that without having to spend taxpayers' money is an absolute bonus. But the more important thing is whatever we do to that roadway, we really should do everything that is recommended as it is now, because there are enormous aspects to the roadway that are not safe. There are turns that aren't safe. There's walkways that aren't safe. You see bicyclists here every weekend. It's not a safe roadway for people bicycling, whether it's kids or grown-ups on their more expensive bikes going through downtown Southborough. Everything that's recommended in the project should be done anyway, because it makes Main Street in Southborough safer for virtually every constituency that uses it. The idea that we get $7 million to do that is an absolute bonus.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Wilson?
My name is John Wilson. I live at 4 Middle Road, and I served on the committee. I just think it would be a shame if we don't improve Main Street. Here we have this golden opportunity that we will receive the money from the state and the federal government to fix this street. As I have said before, it looks like it's been bombed out by mortars and rockets and all kinds of artillery. And people are driving down the middle because their cars get wrecked if they drive along the edge of the road. But our committee did a lot of work, and I hope it's not wasted, but if it is, we have to accept that. But as other folks have said, and Marty just said it, and Karen said it, the roadway is not wider. It's 11 feet in most places. Green space has been added, sidewalks have been added. Directly across the street from here, there is sidewalk parking now, and we made every effort, including moving the stone wall on the common a couple of feet this way, to try to satisfy parking on the other side of the street to go from Fay School down to probably 50 yards before the light, where the left-hand turn is going to be added in. Down the rest of Main Street, we would have sidewalks. I don't know who here, I know Marty walks these streets, and I walk them, and you take a chance at breaking your ankle. But back to what Steve Morielli said way back at this meeting tonight, people don't go to town meeting. The people that were still there in that hall that night were folks that were recruited to come in and vote against the project. And Dan, as you had just said, folks didn't realize that apparently that the whole project depended on the 2/3 vote for the easements that night. So I would urge the committee to stand behind this. And as Bonnie said in the presentation, we need to have these graphics up there side by side and walk people down from Sears Road right down to Park Street to show what the difference will be. And then try to get your friends out to go to town meeting. And I just have one other little grievance, and that is I wish the moderator had counted the vote. He just, looked out and said, there's not a 2/3 vote. Well, I would have given, when he was right. I mean, it was obvious there was not a 2/3 vote in favor of it. But, you know where I'm coming from on this. 2/3 votes, unless they're for a procedural issue, should always be counted. And then that gives everyone, including the town clerk, the information on exactly what the count was that night. So I think we all, if we want it, we have a responsibility, if we have a town meeting, to be active in getting some of our friends to attend that might be in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips? Mr. Phillips?
Hi, Stephen Phillips, 26 Main the choice that our town has in front of us is not between whether to do nothing or to go with the TIP project. One way or another, we are going to fix Main Street, and the choice is whether, the decision we need to make is whether what we gain from going with the federally funded TIP project is worth what we get out of it. I think so really we have sort of a binary choice. On one hand, we decide to approve the TIP project. On the other hand, we go with some sort of a locally funded option, which is hopefully done with using Chapter 90 funding as at least the primary, if not the total source of this, which is provided by the state. I know that some people have the opinion that vote came down to maybe not doing a good sales job or misinformation, but I have a different take on it. I believe that what caused that decision to be made is that of the two alternatives we have in front of us, we have only looked at one. The Main Street Working Group, for all the hard work we put in, we were charged to look at the TIP project, period, to say, how can we make this project better? That $925,000 number that was brought up at a town meeting, that was not a piece of misinformation. That was the only information we had about what the cost of the locally funded option would be. Now, that $925,000 figure came from a memo from the DPW superintendent 2 years ago. It specifically said that Main Street was not any other road. It needed to be treated as a different, similar to the high-traffic roads in town. It called for reclaiming from Sears Road all the way to East Main Street. It called for granite curbing in front of the sidewalks, overlaying and repaving the sidewalks, adjusting drainage, connecting drainage to Fay School, and try to fix the library's drain, add driveway aprons. This was not just a simple, this was a comprehensive thing. Now, maybe we were off by a factor of 2.5 2 years ago. I mean, I'm concerned that a $925,000 estimate has, is 2.25 million. But I think that what's more important than, I think that if we're going to put numbers out like this, we need to do. And if we really want to give people a fair choice between the two options, we have to really understand what's involved in the local option and what we get and what we lose. Now, it was said here tonight that the federal standards are the same as what we do in the town. But we have multiple examples in front of us that we can see that we have more latitude as a town than we do if we do this project according to TIP standards. And I'll give you just two of them. One is that Morrow's Market, that whole area there, that stretch is being done by the town because we can do things under town standards, which we cannot do under the federal standards. That's why that's not being done. And again, go around the corner on Boston Road. That part of the road gets just as much traffic as the rest of Route 30. You look there, we repaved that. We didn't have to move the poles. We were able to do that road without a lot of the things that this federally funded plan called for. So I believe it's incorrect to say that we don't have more latitude here. Now, the decisions on parking are essentially independent of which option we choose as a town. I mean, we can go with a locally funded plan, which with less of a, with whatever the pluses and minuses of that plan are, and we can still make whatever decisions we want to make to balance safety and the convenience of parking in town. I do believe that with a smaller intersection and without having to go by the federal guidelines, that there's more room to accommodate both uses, parking and all that, but I'm pretty sure that every plan we're talking about includes a granite curb. And so to say that somehow if we don't approve the TIP plan that we're going to be walking down these craters of roads for the rest of our lives, that's misinformation. One way or another, we are going to fix Main Street as a town. That's, and so I think that as a town, we're best served by thoroughly understanding what the alternative is to the TIP plan. That's excuse me. And the one last thing I would add to this discussion, we've had another initiative in town that's been going on almost as long as this project is. Since 2001, residents of town have, of Main Street have been pushing for this area of town to be designated as a national register historic district. We did a survey back in the early 2000s which showed dozens of properties here that this area was eligible to be a historic district, and somehow that project has gone nowhere for longer than this project. I understand that the Historical Commission has just updated that study. This area is full of historic and antique properties, and I would call on the selectmen, if you're really serious about this project, I think you should be pushing to move the concept of a National Register Historic District for this area forward, because that would allow us to balance the real concerns about preserving our heritage as a town with the things we need to do for this roadway. If we had had this designation in place when this project was when this project was being pushed along, it would have given us leverage to. It would have forced basically this design to take into account the fact that it was cutting through a district of historic and antique homes. And that's something that I think can't be forgotten here. That's my feeling, is that we owe ourselves both, and I think it's true of the Public Safety Commission as well, that it's not enough to just pursue one vision and just say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do, and we're going to push it through town meeting and push it until it works. We have two alternatives, and it's only fair to examine the benefits and downsides of both alternatives. That's the only way to make a fair decision here. I do believe that Main Street can be maintained within our existing Chapter 90 funding. This is John Butler's number. I don't know whether it's, I can't vouch for its accuracy myself, but he said that for $250,000 a year, we're maintaining, of town money, we're maintaining the rest of our roadways in town. So there's a sort of a disconnect here, why this one stretch of Main Street is so expensive and so difficult to do. I mean, right now, the state's repaving Westboro, the Westboro section of Route 30. They just did our section last year. They didn't rip up everything, put sidewalks everywhere. It's the same shoulders, it's the same work, done with a minimum of fuss and aggravation. So to say that we only have one option here, I think is disingenuous and wrong. We need to explore both options and put a fair decision in front of the voters in town. Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee? From the committee first. Mr. Boland.
John Boland, 12 Richards Road, member of the working group. This project from day one, back in 2004, has been plagued by misinformation and misconceptions about what the project really is. And that is carried through, and it came out loud and clear at the town meeting that those same misconceptions still exist out there. We just haven't got that message out. One of the misconceptions that the committee heard over and over again was the state plan versus the town plan. The state plan versus the town plan. And we kept correcting that over and over again, but it still exists. That notion out there that the state plan versus the town plan still exists. There only was one plan. There never was the second plan. There still isn't a second plan today. We have no idea what the alternative is. As we go forward, as much as I support this, this project, and I think it should move forward. I think it should have moved forward at the town meeting. Pardon me. But it may be wise at this point, given that discussion still exists out there, to consider that the board may want to consider forming another group to develop this alternative that Mr. Phillips just spoke about. Well, I could debate with him on most of the points that he made. What I do agree with is that there are alternatives. There are alternatives. There are different things we can do. But we don't know what that is. We have a lot of numbers out there. We get certain things here and there. Someone has to put that together. What is that alternative? What is the alternative plan? It's a wild number. It could be anything. And we don't know what that is. We obviously had, as hard as the working group tried, we obviously had difficulty wrapping our arms around the elusive feel of the community, the rural atmosphere. The vote of town meeting was negative, so we obviously didn't get that issue across. What is that? Ask 50 people, ask everybody in this room what do those things mean, and you're going to get 50 different answers. Someone has to put that on paper so that when we have the plan as it exists versus another plan, someone has to make that factual. What I might suggest to the board is that they may want to consider forming another group of the outspoken advocates for doing something different than what the last proposal was. Let them take that. We have the base plan, the existing conditions, that exists. Take that and tell us what this alternative might be so that we can make an honest and intelligent decision.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Mouse?
Sue Bows, 28 Lattisquama Road. One thing first, people talk about this is going to become a super highway and wide. I think we're widening the road a foot in a few places, but other than that, the road's not getting any wider. To address Mr. Semino's question, the overages, if things that are in the project end up costing more than they were supposed to, that's still covered by TIP. If we decide we want something that's much more elaborate than is in the plan, like, I don't know, crystal sidewalks or something like that, we would have to pay for that ourselves. That would be the kind of overage that we would have to pay for ourselves, not simply that the project ended up costing more than it was expected, than it was planned for.
Thank you. That's clearly a significant clarification.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why we risk losing the TIP funding is because there are other projects that are having overruns.
Right.
And they're going to funnel the money that otherwise would have gone to us to those other projects.
Right.
So by definition, overruns are eligible for the TIP.
Yes, Ms. Galligan?
Just because there was a little bit more of kind of oddball information that I just want to clarify. For the widening, Ms. Baus just had said that it was 1 foot in a few places. It's actually, it averages 1 foot for the length of the project is the widening. So just to make it clear so it doesn't sound like we're saying something wrong. Chapter 90, to do the project as a Chapter 90, as a repave, that's fine. If you're going to try to do any construction, again, a 3R project, which is resurface, restore, rehabilitate, that's something that's just a maintenance. That's why they didn't have to do anything on Route 30 what the state owns. All they were doing was repaving the exact same thing that was there, the same with the west side, all the way around, west side, east side. Also, there's, that needs to be really clear, because that's what we do on most of our projects. When we use Chapter 90, we generally are just repaving, we're not doing construction. This project is considered reconstruction because we're taking it down to the bottom. Also because of what we're adding for drainage, the amount of improvements, this is a reconstruction or construction project. It's not, so if you were to use Chapter 90, you still need to meet all the state and federal guidelines. So it just needs to be very clear that Chapter 90 is not this magic bullet of you can just do anything with it. As far as what Mr. Phillips had said, besides that, about that, the $925, I think I did explain, $925,000, why that was off. Again, when you're asking for numbers in a quick, you know, turnaround with a 25% design in front of you, you can only get so much. The Boston Road, the reason that we're able to only plane and pave that is because that road has a great base. If you look, and you look at Corderville, which has 12,000 cars a day, you look at 30, which has 8,000 cars a day. Main Street is a mess, Corderville's a mess, but if you actually go onto Boston Road, it's nice. Well, Southville Road has almost 7,000 cars a day. It's got a good base, we're able to maintain it, and for every time you plane off the top and pave it, then you're actually bringing the level of service up 10 points, 10 percentage points, 15 percentage points. And you just, at those, you have to keep them from getting too low again. Main Street was already at failure in '99 when John Bolin started trying to save money for it. This, again, a lot of the projects already 30 feet wide, and to speak to Mr. Bolin's point about what are people looking for, I still don't know what the differences would be. If people are upset with the turning lane, I understand that does widen that intersection. It's still less wide than the Route 85 and Southville Road intersection, which does have 4 left-hand turn lanes. But that cross-section is actually still bigger than the Main Street cross-section is going to be if we do the work. Also, Southville Road and 85 started as a much smaller intersection to start with than Main Street, so it grew a lot bigger than actually the Main Street would be growing. As far as doing all our road work for $250,000 a year, that's not true. We get $430,000 from Chapter 90 a year. We use that. We use 2 years worth of that, and then the $500,000 that I get from 2 years worth of the state, of town meeting, to do our road contracts each year, or every other year. So we have over $1 million in a year to actually do work. We're not actually managing anything with $250,000. If we were going to do what Mr. Bolin had suggested and say, you know what, have someone come up with another plan, let's see what it is, I would still request that somebody come with me on Thursday if we still want it, and at least try to stay on the tip just in case no one likes that other plan. And we just, the Main Street Working Group was able to turn around the project in like 2 months. They really got through and got down to everything. There's no reason people can't manage to do that. And you just would have to find money, we'd have to determine that there was money for them somewhere to do, because they would need some sort of engineering design consultant for that. That was all, sorry. I just wanted to
Yes, ma'am.
debunk.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Rose Morrow, 6 Winchester Street. I'll be quick. I have friends on both sides of this issue. I'm afraid I'm going to lose friends at this point with all the rancor that's out there. When you have, I'm speaking as someone that's been involved recently in a lot of elections and political activity. And when you have a conflict like this, how do you come together after an election? And the way you do is that one side has a mandate. And we accept, because we live in a democracy, that's, we're going to accept the will of the people. Now, in town meeting, I believe there were about 250 people, if the figures I've heard were right, at the vote on this, out of 7,000 registered voters. And that was, let me say, that's actually not even a third of the amount of people that voted for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary, to give you an idea. So I really think it's incumbent that we need to bring this back, and there are things that we can do to reach the people that weren't at town meeting. I think most of the people in this room are just really dug into their sides, and we're not gonna get anywhere with the same 250 people. We need to I think everyone's done a great job. I really appreciate Ms. Galligan's summary here of laying out the issues. And if we can get more people involved and, find out what people think, I think we'll be better off. And when we talk about the state, we're already losing the issue there because we're not a state, we're a commonwealth. Thank you.
Katura Martin, 75 Deerfoot. I was actually here for an earlier agenda item and stayed out of curiosity, so I might be the only person who this is the first time I've ever seen pictures of what the proposed project was going to look like. And I was at town meeting. I was there for the entire thing. And I've lived in Southborough for 4 years, and I had no idea what it was supposed to look like. All I knew at town meeting was what people were saying. And so I do think, just from my perspective, and it's sort of a fresh set of eyes on things, if there were another opportunity for everybody to sit there, to get all of the, I thought the presentation tonight was great. That was really good information about, how much it actually would cost the town to do it, what other huge expenses are coming up, what we'd be missing out on from the town, all of those things. And to see pictures of what it actually is projected to look like, maybe with a map of these are the sections of road that it will cover, because, you hear these road names, you don't always know where they are. There are a lot of people in town who are fairly new to the town, and I think they might not have been following this over the years and years that it's been developing. And so to get a whole presentation from sort of soup to nuts of what this means, because I did talk to people afterwards who really didn't know it was even on the agenda and were disappointed that it wasn't going to happen. They're pushing strollers down Main Street every day. It's a huge pain. I don't know if that would carry the day for everybody who's in support of this, but I think it would do a lot to just educate the people who'd be voting on it.
Thank you. Let's try to wrap this up and just hit on new items that have not yet been mentioned.
Craig Nicholson, 30 Pinecone Lane. Echo on the component of not many people knew it was even an issue for last town meeting, so I think it deserves to be brought up for there. But in addition to not going with the TIP project and really doing the base properly, the ongoing maintenance costs of a less than ideal redesign of the project is just going to add to our overall year-over-year budget and impact us greater than what the initial cost is, because we're going to have to redo it quicker than if we did it right the first time.
Thank you.
Hi, Howard Rose, 2 Bantry. I'm actually not for or against this project. I don't think it's relevant anymore. I'm all for the safety factor. I think we're kidding ourselves, though. I think we had a town meeting, and the people who care enough to vote voted, just like we did with the marijuana dispensary. Same people came out for that. We did it. We used that vote, and we acted on it. It was a very unpopular vote. Most of the town came out and all of a sudden woke up after that, but we had a vote. That's how our Commonwealth works. The town, I think, look at it as a different signal. I think there's a lot of people in this town who are blatantly annoyed and adamant about the amount of building going on in this town. We are expanding at an incredible rate. This Park Central, that's 10% of our town, the other 40B across the street, the new projects going up. Every time I go to a ZBA meeting, there's another.
Just try to focus on the point.
But I think the town came out in the droves that they expected to come out, and if you remember, quite a few people left after that vote. They didn't stay for the rest of the town meeting. They came and made a point that they were tired of, they didn't want this expansion. They liked the small road and the small town feel of their town. They don't want the turn lanes. And I'm not saying I do or don't. I haven't actually made that decision. But I think the vote was very clear that people don't want this. They want it to stay the way it is, to repave it the way it is. And to come here and say, well, the community, they weren't informed and they weren't that. This was a very well-informed campaign. I've only been here 4 years myself, and this has been on the topic every time, whatever. I think we have to respect the voters. And again, I'm not for that side either. I actually like the project. But I think we need to respect the vote that was put forth that said this is not something the town is interested in. They want the road kept the way it is and repaved.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Regina McAuliffe, 5 General Henry Knox. Just first addressing that last man. I'm not sure that everybody knew what they were voting for at the town meeting. And in fact, I believe because of the way it was called, that first it was a hand count and then it was a body count. I do believe some people left before the count even came through. So I'm not I'm very comfortable that it's worthwhile to get the people back to see what the vote will be. And I just wish to affirm that I think the tip is the direction we've been going in for so many years. We've had a lot of people look at this. We've had a lot of input at the meetings with different people, and I think it's time we move forward. And I also wish to affirm that it is going to be very important for one of you to be there Thursday for the meeting, because if we're serious about going through with this, we need to have some foot in the door so that the money hopefully stays sort of towards us and as soon as we can get this project done.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You can close out the comments.
Dave Sowers, 35 Valley Road. I've been a resident for 37 years. But I'm just talking as a town meeting attendee. I thought this issue was done and ready to go forward based on prior year's town meeting. I was shocked when this vote came up and that it was a do or die in the whole thing. The opponents were more informed than those of us who thought that it was a done deal. And I just want to say that in all votes, the majority of the people at town meeting did vote for this project. This was a 1/3, barely 1/3 too, I question the count, barely 1/3 minority who defeated on a parliamentary maneuver. So I would ask you on behalf of the majority of those of us who voted for it to keep it going.
Thank you, sir. So, you know, Mr. Yes, sir.
Stephen Morris, 5 Pearl Street. I also own the properties on Main Street that you all know.
Steve, can I just ask you not to debate the
No,
issue?
I'm just-
Let me
I'm not gonna-
just debate the issue with regards to the town meeting process. So
Okay,
think
I
we've
just
heard
want,
enough of that.
I'm just speaking as a vocal minority
Yes, sir.
here. And I think that we came out, the people, as I've heard through the selectmen tonight, you've heard a lot of people saying that the project should go through as is. I've heard a lot of people come to me and say the project, they are glad the project did not go through. So you're hearing both sides of this. I agree with John Boland here. I believe you should form another committee to come up with some alternative plan here, and I think, personally, I think the selectmen should be more on hands with this project than they have in the past. I'm not condemning you for the way it was run, but you put everything in the hands of this committee, and I don't think the committee heard everything that people were saying in this town. And I think another committee should be formed, come up with some alternative plan, and I think the selectmen should be more on hands with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. To the extent that there's criticism relative to the public education and not getting enough people or getting the interest advanced to discuss at town meeting, that responsibility falls on this board. And to the extent, as I said, there's a feeling that there was a failure in that regard, that's a failure, that's our responsibility. I disagree, Mr. Morris, with your comment relative to the procedures and the process followed by the group. I thought their inclusion was overwhelming. The number of meetings were just excessive, and I think they received input at every stage of the process. And I know that at many of the meetings, there was at least a representative of the board, this board present. We may not have been at all the meetings, but we did try to attend as many meetings as we could so that we understood what was going on, we understood what the concerns were, we understood what the objections were. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Well, I think going back to town meeting a second time is not doing something over and over again. I do think we need to go with really one set of numbers, that set being the numbers that can be allocated from the TIP project, and another set of numbers of the local option, because it doesn't serve anyone any good to be throwing out numbers of 250 to do this road, 925 to do this road, 2.25 to do this road. What the citizens, what the residents are entitled to, and I think what we all are aiming for, is to understand what that number is. And that number really needs to be guided, in my opinion, by Mr. Wilson's comment relative to safety. We need to focus on and design this roadway and repair this roadway and construct this roadway with safety as the top priority. Because I don't know how many people who voted against this project at town meeting have tried to pull out of Middle Road at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, perhaps, or at any time of the day when there are parked cars there. It is the antithesis of safety, and forgetting about the issue relative to pedestrians and bicyclists. So we need to design the roadway. I agree with Mr. Phillips. Something will be done. Something needs to be done. But let's get together on a consensus of what that number is, so that, you know, we know what will it cost the taxpayer if we are in fact off this list. If it's 2.25, then that's the number, and that's the number that we need to go to town meeting with. I mean, it's easy to sit as a Monday morning quarterback and say, listen, we should have done X at town meeting, we should have done Y at town meeting, we should have had more visuals. You know, maybe we should have. Well, now we have the opportunity, I think, to do that. And I guess the opportunity will be dictated based upon this Thursday meeting. Karen, I have a couple questions for you. One, I understand that currently there's some deficit TIP funding ongoing, which would impact the possibility of us, which impacts our slot. And the second thing is, there is also, there are no other projects ready to take our place. And what does that do to our spot?
So last time I talked to the staff of the MPO, they were looking at trying to take our space and use overages for it, and put overages into it if our readiness had gone off and we'd be off the TIP. The DOT and a lot of the members of the actual MPO that do the voting want to hold off and wait and see if Southborough can come to readiness, you know, if that's what we want to be doing, at which point the staff didn't know of anybody who was ready, but on the same, because we're sort of a $7 million, sort of a small project for that. I mean, there's a few in there. Holbrook's got like one for $3 million or whatever. But if there were a couple that could move forward, then we could move back. Or if the problem is they kind of have to make this vote Thursday, and they have to know what if our willingness is to do that. They will lose the money if the fiscal starts and they haven't programmed it. However, they can. As long as we have a meeting before, like if our town meeting, if we know we're at readiness and we're trying, then they will hold that spot for us. And this DOT is really hard working to keep them to do that, and I believe our legislators who had backed us up originally to get onto the TIP would be willing to help back that up.
Okay. I think from what I heard, there seems to be unanimous support on this board to at least attend that meeting on Thursday to try to convince whomever it is that needs to be convinced to give Southborough another bite at the apple, if you will, at another town meeting. But I think the real input of the discussion is that what we are really, ultimately, the objective here is to give the residents the option, or to keep the option open, if you will. The option open, the option A would be to use the TIP money, and the option B would be to locally fund this project, and to have both those items on the table at the next town meeting. That would be the objective. That's kind of where I come out.
Well, then it begs the question, does that mean we're wasting our time on Thursday? If our presentation on Thursday is, hey, we need more time to think about whether we want to do this or maybe something else Is that tenuous enough for them that they'd say, you know what, don't, and then forget it? Which is a theme that I think, is
Well,
a repeat of like a year ago.
Well, I do think perhaps the tact on Thursday is that we convince the state that we are enthusiastically optimistic that we can convince town meeting with the funding, or for the funding, and we'll see what happens. The reality is if that doesn't work, then we'll at least have a local option available as well. In other words, I don't think the state loses anything by keeping us on that list with our efforts to try to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I don't know the answer, but I think the state is looking for an indication of where it's likely to go. And if you emphasize that we're looking for a second alternative, which I think you should, I think it's truthful, so I'm for it. I'm for being forthright with the state. My only point is, given that forthrightness, what is their likely reaction?
And we don't know. I mean, anyone from the state who views any of these meetings already knows that people are looking at alternatives, and that's fine. So does this board, does this town want to see this project continue? I think I've heard from everyone that we're all in favor of that, and I think that's what we obviously go forward with on Thursday. We don't have to discuss the various machinations of alternate projects. I mean, we know that we would like to still be considered for this one. That's my opinion, and that's what I think our best shot is on Thursday.
The other issue that I think we should address is, and I somewhat reluctantly bring this up because I can anticipate the shudder from the existing Main Street Working Group, but the suggestion, and I think it's a very good suggestion by Mr. Boland, that consideration be given to provide town meeting with the locally funded option and how we get to that point. And I think it's important to get to that point whereby that locally funded option is presented to town meeting as this is the number that it will cost to do the locally funded project, rather than having other numbers come out from other people. We need to agree that if we're gonna do this roadway work with our own taxpayer money, this is the work that needs to be done, and this is the cost. Ms. Galligan, do you have any suggestions as to how we get to that point?
Well, actually, that's what, the Main Street Working Group kind of has a project in their head at this point. So it comes down to the reason why it's so difficult that, and there's such an array of numbers. The one question you asked is, what if we did the project without any easements? And that was where we did that, that's that $5 million number. That's doing everything but with no easement, so anything that requires an easement can't be done. The problem that we have is that we had all these meetings prior to having the Main Street Working Group, and I know you guys, a lot of people remember these, where we had 50 people in a room, we're all talking about what's good, what do we want to see. And with keeping in mind, of course, that we want the, we're trying to keep with the master plan, make it a multimodal type of road where, and, have it be a beautiful road. That was the goal, make it be an entrance to downtown Southborough. Problem is that no one could really agree on this, and if the locally funded option, it's more of a question of, we talk about it as though it's some whole different set of standards, and now I can have just, General Henry Knox's trail running back through the town with gravel, grass growing up between the two wheel things, and I'm not 100% sure what anyone's looking for. And I think that's where the Main Street Group probably isn't the right group to deal with that. It's really everybody who has this other idea that there's something out there. We already have on the east side of the intersection, we already have a 30-foot shoulder. And then people are parking on the sidewalk, so it's between a 30-foot roadway, not shoulder. They're parking on the sidewalk and in the shoulder. So the question is what are we looking for? We went through a lot of processes where people came up and decided, we had many meetings just about whether or not there were going to be parking, how we were going to do parking, if we were going to do partial or full. Any group who's going to try to meet and do this is going to have the exact same problem that the DPW struggled with, and then the consultant struggled with, and then the Main Street Working Group struggled with, is that everybody's got an opinion and everybody's got a different picture, and we have to figure out what that is, and that's why it's so difficult to come up with this locally funded option. Or is it just no turning lanes? Okay, well then can we
Chairman?
fund that? Like, somebody's got to give direction.
We move the question.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the answer, though, Dan, to move anything insofar as.
Well, I think we've been asked, whether or not we support, does this board support the efforts on Thursday of trying to convince the officials of the Commonwealth that we still want to go forward with this?
That's the easy question. I agree with that. That's the easy question.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that.
We could keep talking for another hour about the
Well,
variations.
I do think that's the easy question, and we can certainly move that question. I think the harder question is, okay, if we're looking towards a fall town meeting, and we still have that tip funding as a possibility, how do we come up with this alternative, or is there an alternative for a locally funded plan? How do we get those numbers together?
And I agree, but having that discussion tonight before we even know about Thursday's decision, I'm not sure is the wisest use of our time tonight. It might be next meeting, after Thursday's meeting.
It may be the only discussion we have,
That's also correct.
right? Yeah, I think you make a good point, Mr. Kalenda. I don't think there's need. We probably should wait to see what happens on Thursday before we decide, because the only decision that may be left is a locally funded option.
And if you're looking for guidance from us, do we need a vote? I mean, I think you're hearing guidance from this board that I haven't heard anyone say, we don't want you to go forward with a positive request to continue.
A vote would be good, just so that there was a specific commitment by elected officials that said, yes, we are in favor of trying to stay on this.
Yeah, I think a vote gives Karen more, second.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Now, the second question was if any member of this board was available to attend that meeting with you. What time of day was that meeting?
It's at 10 o'clock in the morning in Boston. Thursday.
I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Shea is available, that he attend it.
So,
I'll make a motion that Ms. Vaniff attend it.
I was going to say, Ms. Fanis, will you give Mr. Shea a ride?
I don't drive to Boston.
will you fill in for my client meeting in Lowell at 10 o'clock on Thursday?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll just say yes to everything. Are you available?
I am not.
I have a meeting that ends at 10. So if I can virtually join you on the phone, I can do that, but I have a work meeting that ends at 10. Mr. Semino, what say you?
I have a meeting at 10 that I can move, so I can do it.
I may be able to attend as well. I will touch base with you tomorrow, Karen.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Because you touched base about what the working group, I'm assuming it sounds like from, I think Mr. Kalenda said it, that at some point you're going to revisit the question about how to come up with an alternative. If you're going to do that at your next meeting, I have no idea if it'll be useful, but we'll meet, the working group will meet, and brainstorm and see if we have any ideas. I mean, the one thing is, one thing that we found out is that you can't do it, you can't come up with ideas for what things are going to cost or what things can and can't be done without engineers. It's going to cost the town money. And there's going to have to be a determination of what role they will play. But we're happy to, well, I'm speaking for other folks, but I suspect there's an awful lot of commitment from the folks on the working group. We'll meet, we'll brainstorm, and maybe have some input if you put it on the next agenda or the agenda after that for your meetings, for at least some suggestions for what could be done and what potential role we could play in doing it.
That'd be tremendously helpful. Thank you. So that took a little longer than I expected. Public Works Planning Board, revised charge from Selectmen. Mrs. Faniff, do you want to run this discussion since you were involved in the meeting and the formulation of the document?
I would prefer to allow the DPW superintendent and the chair of the committee, since we were just advocates at the table.
You go. Thank you very much for this opportunity tonight. As you all know, back in the fall, I think it was November, you voted in a set of goals, one of which included looking over the roles and responsibilities of boards and committees. And the Public Works Planning Board specifically was specifically listed in that, among, I think, a couple others. So we took it very seriously, as we do report to you and give advice on DPW matters. So we met initially and then reached out to Chairman Rooney and asked for an informal working session. At that point, we got an idea of where we were at and what we needed to do. And then Mr. Shea and Mrs. Faniff act as liaisons with us. And all of us, the board, Mr. Shea, Mrs. Faniff, and Ms. Galligan, all are in full agreement with the proposed charge. I will say that we met this evening prior to, in conjunction to your meeting, and we did just have one little typo, if you will, on the charge, and that's on the first bullet. It should read, and it was voted on unanimously to read, an initial review of the annual operating budget, which we forgot to put in, and capital plan for the Department of Public Works and its subsidiary divisions prior to the consideration of the advisory committee, period. It's redundant to have annual town meeting if you're gonna be talking about it before advisory. The idea of this, this particular article is just to have an initial peer review from our committee after Mr. Purple and Mr. Ballantyne meet with Ms. Galligan, so that Ms. Galligan can have a somewhat of a little direction of, you know, local opinion about the budget as moving forward. But again, day-to-day operation, operational decision-making, all rests in the hands of the DPW superintendent. That is not part of what we feel we should be doing at all. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I just have one on that
Sure.
change. Initial review of the annual operating budget
Yes,
and capital budget.
And capital
plan,
And
because
capital
there is
plan.
no Ms. Galligan can speak better to this. There's no actual operating budget per se, it's a 5-year plan. And so that was just a typo. So every year, the 5-year plan gets rolled into with what you're gonna do. You see that on warrant articles. So we would just be looking year to year on what that cycle of the plan for that year would consist of.
Okay, that should have clarified, but it didn't. Let me tell you where, well, let me tell you where I'm getting hung up. Annual operating budget, are you talking about your board reviewing the budget of Karen's department in conjunction with Mr. Purple before it goes to advisory?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Not necessarily in the same room, but it's, you know, after Mr. Purple and Mr. Ballantyne give the superintendent an idea of where she's going, then we feel as a board it's appropriate just to vet it out, see if there's any citizen concerns, and then she runs with it the rest of the way.
My only concern was trying to just not add another level of review, because the review, multiple levels
course.
now, and I'm just wondering whether or not,
We had a distinct discussion about that, I think.
okay. You're
Is
good
it-
with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
I'm sorry.
This is listed under advising the Board of Selectmen on an annual basis. Isn't that first bullet really more of an advisory to the DPW superintendent?
Not necessarily. We would be working out, our main goal when it comes to operation and the capital plan is ultimately to come before you when Ms. Galligan presents her budget and say that the Public Works Planning Board has had an opportunity to review this. And it's our hope, as most of the things that end up happening in our years together, that we want the public to know and your board to know that we support her, what is going on. It's just a peer review mechanism, and we'd like to be able to tell you that we support that budget. And also, just to elaborate, one of the core, in the DPW charge that was created through home rule, it specifically lists that the Public Works Planning Board offers the Board of Selectmen advice on planning, managing, and financing of the DPW.
John, if I may?
Yes,
So
go ahead.
technically, the language from 1991 says, "There's hereby established in the town of Southborough a Public Works Planning Board to advise the Board of Selectmen in matters of planning, managing, and financing of said town." So it doesn't even mention the DPW. So it just says of said town. So it was a pretty vague charge, and it's just that one sentence that's in that article that was passed by the town in 1991. So the purpose of putting together this charge was to just provide a little bit more definition to the Public Works Planning Board, a little more clarification of the roles and responsibilities, but doing so in a manner that does not infringe upon the responsibilities and the roles that the town has delegated to the superintendent of the Department of Public Works. So it was, so that's really a story behind the story as to why this came about.
And how do we resolve that read with the read we have here, that first sentence?
I don't understand your question.
So I think that, again, the way that this first sentence reads, that could just as easily apply to the advisory committee as it does to a Public Works Planning Board. And that it's to advise the Board of Selectmen in matters of planning, managing, and financing of said town. I think it's more appropriate that, where they're named a Public Works Planning Board, that their scope be focused to the Department of Public Works. So I think that this, having this board, adopt this policy, which is, we can certainly amend on an annual basis or more frequently, less frequently, just to give further clarification and direction than the language that's in.
So if anything, this language in front of us today is narrowing, not expanding, done in
1991.
91.
Which then I would think we could do.
Yeah, that 1991 language is pretty surprising if you read it now as to how that.
Yeah.
We're trying to define what their role is.
Right.
And there's a buy-in right now by everyone.
So,
And
if I
also
may.
to, I'm sorry, I was gonna answer your question.
No, go ahead. Then I have a couple
Also,
questions.
too, what I was going to say is, everything that's listed right now under charge in the bullets are things that, once the Public Works Planning Board got back on board with 5 full members 2 years ago, we've been doing anyway. So we've had initial meetings relative to water rates. We gave you a memo regarding that last year. We've just this evening went over the review of the rules and regulations for the transfer station. I'll be putting together a memo to give you that for your next meeting. We're currently in the process of doing all these things in conjunction with the superintendent. And we just wanted a formalization of that, so everybody's on board with what our role really should be.
So you've actually hit on the exact 2 bullets that I wanted to question you on, because, so this is all strategic in nature. I see bullets 3 and 4 as very tactical. Annual review of water rates, to me, that's not a strategic initiative, that's an annual, what should the water rate be? I don't see that as strategic. And then all rules and regulations for the DPW, many of those could be very day-to-day, very tactical issues. I don't see that as strategic. If it said all strategic rules and regulations for the DPW, or any strategic, not setting of water rates, strategic analysis of what water, maybe I'm missing the point of the strategic component of this, and then, because I see the other bullets, all to me are strategic in nature. Those 2, can you help reconcile?
Sure. It's really anything that the Board of Selectmen has to vote on. You have to vote to set the water rates. You have to vote on the rules and regulations of the transfer station, of the cemetery. You are making the final vote. We're simply vetting it out with the DPW superintendent, whom works very well with us and asks us for our opinions on these specific issues, so that she can then come forward with a recommendation, we can come forward with a recommendation, and you, as the Board of Selectmen, are the ultimate people that vote on these things. You vote on the operating budget, you vote on the capital plan. That's your role.
Okay.
So we're providing advice and vetting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed. I think this is a good work product. That was my query. Are we getting too much into the weeds of your business? If this is supposed to be strategic in nature, are these things more day-to-day, or do you
says
not
it
see
here.
that?
No, these things are
So
things
not
that I would have to
Why-
bring to you anyway.
I'm sorry?
These are things I'd have to bring to you anyway, so vetting them ahead of time
More-
makes sense.
More review is good for you. Okay,
fine.
good.
So let me ask you, are you going to submit a draft amended as of today?
The final amendment will be with those the two changes of words, and that's it.
So
That's
we'll-
what
we
we've
can
all
then
voted on.
We can then approve that at our next meeting.
You can approve it at your next meeting if you so choose, if you want. But we voted on it. I will clean up the two typos, and resubmit it to you if that's your choice, but
What about
it's
this?
not gonna
Maybe
change.
this is.
Yeah, you can vote it
uncon-
as amended.
Yeah, unconventional. Can we vote to approve it as amended,
Yeah.
and then you
Yes.
can get us the one and
Of course,
assuming
I'll
it
bring it,
is,
I'll
we'll
send it
just-
to you tomorrow.
You-
So
Mr.
moved.
Purple, Mr. Purple's got comment,
Yeah,
question.
no, I've been waiting patiently.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So I do think, and I've told Karen this before, that I think it's very beneficial for the Public Works Planning Board to have them as an advocate for, the things that she does and the things she brings forward. I think from the budgeting perspective, I think to get the input of Public Works Planning Board after the finance director and I have already met with her and everything, and that is too late in the game at that point. What I would like to see out of the process would be, normally I will have conversations with the department heads early on in the process. What are you thinking of doing? What initiatives do you want to do? And I think that's the point where Public Works Planning Board can have more input so that you can, vet those things with her, and then she's bringing that stuff forward. Because if we meet on something and, and then you decide what you want to do, I think it's too late in the game. If you come forward and say, these are the things that I've talked to Public Works Planning Board, we want to bring these things forward, and then at some point, we decide that, the funding's not there, this isn't the year, then, by all means, advocate that issue and try and see if we can convince, selectmen otherwise.
And that doesn't preclude us from doing it that way with
Right.
this initial, because it is an initial review.
Right.
So that doesn't preclude
Right.
us from doing that at all.
Absolutely,
And
and I just,
perfectly fine
and
with
I
that.
just
We've
wanted to
talked
put that
about
out,
that.
that get your input in early, because.
Sounds great.
Nothing against Public Works Planning or anything else like that, but I'm gonna side with, if the department head wants to go ahead with this, and is comfortable and everything in that, I'm gonna defer, more in that direction unless it's something absurd.
Completely agree.
So, and she hasn't given me anything absurd yet.
No.
So,
And that, Mr. Purple, is a completely valid point. We had multiple discussions about that. I think Mrs. Faniff and Mr. Shea can
Yeah.
concur with me. And nothing in that first bullet would preclude for that from happening.
absolutely. So I'm just suggesting, since you mentioned the process slightly different, I was
Sure.
just, we can shape that.
Giving an example.
Okay, perfect. All set.
So it's been moved.
Second,
Second.
any further discussion?
So we're saying operating budget and capital plan, and we're deleting
And annual town meeting.
the last 4 words of the sentence. All of the edits are in the first bullet.
Yes, that's it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I'll email this to Mr. Purple tomorrow.
Thank you. Town Administrator report.
Given the lateness of the hour, I will just mention one thing. On Friday, I was fortunate to be asked by the Mass Municipal Association to be a moderator for a regional meeting of the Human Services Council in Northborough regarding the opiate crisis in the Commonwealth. We had several good speakers from the Attorney General's office in Worcester County, also Department of Health. We had a doctor from McLean Hospital, There was about 50 people in attendance, both of our employees, our Youth and Family Services employees were there. It was great to see them. And I also want to point out that our representative, Carolyn Dykema, took time out of her day to spend the morning and part of the afternoon with us. She has been in the forefront on this issue, has been very supportive, and so it was a very good day to continue the discussion, about this issue.
Thank you.
So, one quick comment.
Sure.
You touched on Representative Dykema. For the meeting that's upcoming on Thursday, could you reach out to Representative Dykema and perhaps Senator Eldridge as well to see if they could offer a correspondence?
I'll reach out to both. I know that, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that our legislative delegations, do try and attend the MPO meetings, and if not in person, then at least their staff members are there. So I will see if we can get a personal appearance on Thursday from one or both.
Mr. Hagerty.
I noticed you skipped over the public comment. Can I make a brief
I
comment?
thought the public had been all commented out, but go right ahead, sir.
I rise here as a citizen here, 14 Maple Crest Drive. And I got to tell you, I'm very, very concerned. The last time I came with you and talked to you about 9/11, we were all very pleased with the progress and the legislation that was passed. In fact, I have an original copy signed by the governor of the bill that was passed on the 4th, and I talked to Representative Dykema that we're going to go to the high schools in the fall to talk about government citizen participation and action to get kids involved. That 14 or 15 people signed a citizens petition, which started a train, which caused a vote at town meeting, which caused a special act to be passed, which caused legislation to be passed, and we all thought everything was going great. I have to tell you, I'm very concerned that the train has come off the tracks, and we're in great, great danger of not having 9/11 ready. I just had a conversation a few minutes ago with my neighbor here from the Recreation Commission to learn that DCR had told the town that they would be 6 to 8 months more before they would be able to address this issue. Now, that is an enormous issue that you should be made aware of. If that's the case, then the town has any political clout through the lieutenant governor or the governor, I don't get it. All we need to do is to take that contract that we had for 5 years, and when Mr. Rooney and Mr. Purple and Mr. Calendar and I met with DCR a couple of years ago and in the summer, and they loved the process, and they continue to give us, recurring 5-year leases. All we have to do is take that lease and put a 1 in front of it. But this is a very significant issue. We're now talking, it's been 3 months plus since the governor signed this. There's been no traction, no progress whatsoever. If this is 6 to 8 months for them to resolve this issue, that brings us into the winter before you can start any process. You can't do construction on that over the winter, which basically means the kids aren't going to play on the field in the spring. They're in grave risk of that. It's a big deal. I would ask that you request that this be a prioritized item and that you have regular updates to ensure that the train gets back on the tracks.
So the lieutenant governor was just here.
Yes.
All right? Let's reach out to her tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, and that's fine. We can do that. I had a conversation on Friday with Representative Dykema, and she has been, I'll use the word tenacious, in terms of trying to get DCR to move this issue, and they have not been responsive. So we'll raise the bar a little bit in terms of
Yeah, I would say we contact
engaging.
Representative Dykema first, of course. I mean, she's been outstanding and a great advocate for this, and let her know what we'd like to do is, through or with her, contact the lieutenant governor who was just here and see what we can do to move the issue.
What about going even further and having a draft agreement presented in front of them to sign?
Honestly, the suggestion, let's just take what we had for the 5, and I'm not being a wise guy when I say this. The last 5-year agreement worked for us, just literally changed the 5 to a 15. I've heard discussions about trying to talk to them about putting lights up there and cutting down more trees, and those are all non-starters. Is it the best? No. Does it work for us? Yep. It's 80% of what we need. Let's just, seriously, I would just take the contract we have, change the 5 to a 15, and we're off to the races.
Well, and I think to satisfy bond counsel, we do need to change a little bit more, because the state can't have the out clauses that they do in order to just pull the rug out from under us. So, I mean, yes, there's some minor tweaks,
Okay.
but to your point, yes, I mean, you pretty much could take that and move forward with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve a consent. Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Question? Sorry. On number 1, it says April 25th, but on the header of the minutes, it says April 26th. I wasn't present, so I'm not. Just correct the date, whatever it might be.
26th was the Tuesday.
Is there a second?
We actually met, I think, on the 25th, though,
Yeah,
at
it
the
was
senior
a-
center that day.
I think it was,
So it was
Monday,
it
the
was
25th.
So the minutes are wrong.
That's,
they
So
just need to be
I'll just
correct.
move, we approve 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the noted amendment of the minutes themselves to reflect the correct date of April 25th.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Move consent agenda item number 5.
I have one question. In dissolving a position on the Breakneck Hill Cow Fund representative on the stewardship committee, that will then leave that committee with an even number of members, since no one would be reappointed in that position. What do we do in those situations? Does anyone know?
There are some boards that have an even number of members, so it's, it's not ideal, but it's not completely uncommon.
Would we open up that committee for an additional member that
You certainly
obviously would
could.
not be a representative of the cow fund, since that doesn't exist anymore?
Right.
Would we open up that committee membership for?
That's certainly, under the board's purview, but you could expand the
Okay.
committee.
Will you address that at some future point?
Yes.
Okay. That was my only question. Your second?
I had one question.
Yes, I'm
The
sorry.
Sidewalk Construction Recommendation Committee. I'm not aware of what the final report, did we receive a final report? Did Karen?
Yes.
Did I just
Yeah, we
miss that?
did,
Yeah,
we
we
did,
did.
we had a presentation on that as well.
No more other question then.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move consent agenda item number 6.
Second.
These are the staff appointments that were in our packet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions from anyone?
I have one.
Yep.
8th line down, we list the constable, William E. Pickett Jr., and then the first line of police department is the chief, also listed as constable.
Paul.
first title.
Paul.
It appears we have 2 constables in town, at least to me. I'm sure I'm wrong about that, but can somebody clarify? The 8th line down, William E. Pickett is a constable. The first line of the police department lists the chief's title as constable.
I believe he has that.
I've always thought it was the chief.
Yes.
So I'm
No,
not sure who
no,
William
the-
Pickett.
The chief does have that authority, but William Pickett is the person who is used most often as constable. The chief
Right.
is not. The chief does it as is necessary, but
For
he's
town
not.
documents,
Right, he's
basically.
not the first line of
Okay.
defense.
No other questions.
Is there a motion?
I moved
Has
it.
that already been seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Other matters? I don't see any.
Do not have any.
Executive session, the board will be entering into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, and not returning to open session. The issue to be discussed is negotiations with non-union personnel. Exemption number 2 requires a roll call vote. Rooney, aye.
Semino, aye.
Belinda, aye.
Identify.
Shay, aye.
We are in executive session. Thank you for coming. Good evening.